Chapter 282. It could only be said that this was the horror of the spirit energy information era. Back then, many cultivators who went into seclusion would never have thought that the informatization of the cultivation world could develop to such an extent. As soon as they swiped their third-generation ID cards, the systems of various places would immediately respond. The Skynet system in Warden Liang's prison was currently Huaxiao Nation's largest anti-crime super software, which automatically tracked down wanted criminals online and covered the entire country. In addition to being able to quickly capture suspects through facial features, the three-generation ID card linkage was also one of its functions. It was just that this speed was a little beyond Wang Ling's imagination, and also subverted everyone's fixed impression of him. It had only been 5 minutes since they had gotten their IDs checked at the station, but Ajwa had already received the news in Songhai City. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, and the others all heard Ajwa's voice on the phone, and soon after, they had reluctant expressions on their faces. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. After all this time, it turns out Little Zhua sent this car. Little Zhua, who's this? Fatty Luo asked. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Little Zhua's full name is Ajwa, and he's the director of the General Administration of 100 schools in Songhai City. He's also our Ling Jinren's disciple. I'll introduce him to you next time. Oh, it's that Little Zhua. Salian Jinren, Fu Wang, and the others suddenly realized. Everyone stood where they were. The government black commercial vehicle, with the sky blue license plate, was already slowly approaching. When it got close, the car steadily stopped. As the window rolled down, Wang Ling saw a young man of about 30 in the driver's seat. He was dressed in a suit and had a standard buzz cut. As soon as the car window rolled down, he greeted him with a smile. Is this teacher Wang Ling? The young man stared at Wang Ling. This was because Ajwa knew that since the young man had never seen Wang Ling before, even if he gave him a photo, it would instantly turn into a mosaic. So he simply told the young man directly that Wang Ling was a very young-looking teenager with a poker face. Therefore, the young man recognized it with a single glance. Moreover, he was sure that he was not mistaken. Wang Ling, teacher. The corner of Wang Ling's mouth twitched again. When had he been addressed like this? My name is Zhao Kai. Teacher Zhua sent me to pick up seniors. The young man gave a simple self-introduction. Seniors, please get in the car. Feel free to let me know if you have any arrangements for the next 2 days. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal raised his eyebrows. When did Little Zhua accept disciples? Zhao Kai smiled awkwardly. Actually, I'm the Deputy Director of Winter City's General Administration of 100 schools. I just became Teacher Zhua's disciple not long ago, so I wanted him to help me with my work. Oh, so he's a teacher at work. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal immediately understood. If it was a cultivation Shifu, then Wang Ling would probably become a Shigong. If that was the case, this young man had really made a killing. In the car, Zhao Kai held the steering wheel firmly. He was a little nervous. Ajwa had especially told him that the people coming to Winter City this time were all famous great seniors in the cultivation circle in Songhai City, and he couldn't afford to offend any of them. In particular, Ling Jinren, who looked the youngest and the most handsome, had a poker face and didn't like to talk, so they had to be especially respectful when facing him. Furthermore, Zhao Kai had also prepared crispy noodle snacks according to Ajwa's instructions. They were in the car cabinet in the front passenger seat. But from beginning to end, he didn't have the courage to give the crispy noodle snacks to Wang Ling staring at the cabinet in the front passenger seat. Zhao Kai sighed in his heart. He looked in the rearview mirror and asked weakly, Seniors, where are we going? Do you know Sanyuan Road? Fatty Luo asked as he moved his head closer to the mirror. Sanyuan Road? Zhao Kai nodded. It's a road on the outskirts of Winter City, and it's very remote. But it's rich in spirit energy, and there used to be a lot of sect headquarters here, like White Dragon Taoist Temple, Money Dragon Sword Sect, and so on. But as the cold air from the far north seeped into Winter City, the temperature dropped even more than before. Later, these sects all moved out, because Foundation establishment disciples in Winter City couldn't stand the cold at all. White Dragon Taoist Temple and Money Dragon Sword Sect. Hearing this, Wang Ling's heart stirred. It wasn't just him. Grenade-throwing senior immortal, and the others next to him, also had curious expressions on their faces. Of these two great sects, White Dragon Taoist Temple was famous for its 8 trigrams array, while Money Dragon Sword Sect was famous for its cloud-piercing sword technique. These two great sects didn't have a long history, but they were cradles for nurturing foundation establishment cultivators. Furthermore, they had branches all over the country, and their status was comparable to that of Lanxiang in the mining industry. Zhao Kai was a local of Winter City who had grown up here, so he had a good understanding of its culture and geography. It could be said that Ajua had found the right person to pick up Wang Ling and the others this time. Seeing the curious expressions on the faces of the great seniors in the back of the car, he thought for a while, then continued. Of course, outsiders say that the two great sects left Winter City because of environmental problems. Internally, there's another saying that the two great sects were forced to leave. Hearing this, Grenade-throwing senior immortal's heart stirred, and he perked up. Can you elaborate? Some people say that the two sect leaders received a huge sum of money and left. Others say that the two old sect leaders were coerced. But no matter what the rumors are, the situation isn't very good. Zhao Kai smiled bitterly. Actually, this wasn't a secret in Winter City, but most of it was hearsay, and he couldn't go into detail. However, Zhao Kai still told them everything he knew as they drove. The cause of this incident was the ancestral land occupied by the White Dragon Taoist Temple and the Money Dragon Sword Sect on Sanyuan Road. The headquarters of these two sects were established here, just like McDonald's and KFC. Each of them occupied a spirit vein at the foot of Sanyuan Road. This spirit vein was currently a very scarce land resource in the country, but the two sects had each occupied half of it, and had been here since ancient times. Several times, senior officials from the Land Resource Bureau had gone to negotiate with them, but had returned empty-handed. But about 10 years ago, the two sects had moved away one after another. Although Zhao Kai didn't know how this had started, Grenade-throwing senior immortal felt that at least half of the cause and effect could be explained by Immortal Mansion. Then, who is the owner of this spirit vein on Sanyuan Road now? I don't know. In any case, it doesn't belong to the country or the two great sects now. I heard that the ancestral land of the two sects has been purchased, Zhao Kai said as he drove. How could I not know? Zhao Kai pursed his lips and said, well, the ownership of the spirit vein has always been a top secret. People who aren't at that level have no access to it. And the strangest thing is that there are no buildings on the spirit vein on Sanyuan Road. No buildings? Did he hide it? Chapter 283. The 7 people in the car weren't surprised by the complexity of Immortal Mansion. To be able to establish a foothold in Winter City, where the military was stationed and the security was strict, even ID checks had to go through the Skynet system. Even an idiot could tell how deep the waters behind this were. But the problem now was that Wang Ling could clearly sense that Jinka was on Sanyuan Road. But Victory Zhao said that there were no buildings on Sanyuan Road. What was going on? Could they have used some kind of invisible illusion spell, or built an underground palace? Cao Yanjinren guessed. That's impossible. The leaders of the Land Resource Bureau aren't fools. They've already thought of everything the seniors can think of. After the two sects left one after another, that spirit vein inexplicably became a private property. But we can't get in touch with its owner. A few years ago, there were people waiting here every year. But since this year, no one has come, said Victory Zhao. Why? Because they've given up resisting. If we can't get in touch with the owner, there's no point in squatting here. Holding the steering wheel, Victory Zhao shrugged helplessly. From their conversation in the car, Victory Zhao could already vaguely guess what these seniors were going to do. It had to have something to do with the owner of the spirit vein. Furthermore, it was very obvious that this group of seniors had brought a map and marked the location. They had definitely come prepared, because he had some understanding of the situation on Sanyuan Road. When he heard that these 7 people were going there, Victory Zhao's heart had thumped, and he had privately thought that this group of seniors had found the wrong location. But when he heard that it was Ling Junren who had marked the coordinates on the map in the car, in the end, he could only shrink back and swallow his words. He couldn't offend any of the 7 seniors in the car, especially that Ling Junren. This was something Director Zhua had emphasized repeatedly when he had called him earlier. In fact, even if Zhua hadn't emphasized it, Victory Zhao could feel the respect the other seniors in the car had for this Ling Junren. Along the way, Victory Zhao pretended to glance at Wang Ling out of the corner of his eye through the rearview mirror in the car. Apart from marveling at how young this Ling Junren was, he also started to feel a lot more curious about him. Grenade-throwing senior immortal was in the front passenger seat. After thinking for a bit, Victory Zhao asked very carefully, "Does Ling Junren usually not like to talk?" After hearing this, Grenade-throwing senior immortal nodded very seriously. Isn't there a saying that silence is golden? All sages like to think. Then what is Ling Junren thinking about? On the way here just now, Ling Junren was thinking about the exercises in 1 talisman and 1 seal script, and I'm guessing he's still thinking about his midterm exam. When Zhao Kai heard this, he could not help but sigh in his heart. The matter of the sage was really hard to fathom. Only now did he realize that the practice textbook of a talisman and a seal script was actually so useful. He seemed to have found the gap between himself and these great seniors. He could only blame himself for his lack of talent, for not being able to understand the secrets of heaven from this common high school practice textbook. After thinking for a while, Zhao Kai decided to change the topic. "Senior, we're about to reach the Sanyuan Road. It's just up ahead." So fast, Zhao Kai was familiar with the roads in Winter City. Moreover, he was using a commercial vehicle with a government license plate. He even used the green lane to pass through the toll station, so it was reasonable for him to be fast. The black commercial vehicle sped along the highway. When it passed a road sign, Grenade-throwing senior immortal took a look and, sure enough, saw that the intersection of Sanyuan Road was after the highway up ahead. "Just drop us off at the intersection, you can go back first. If I need your help, I definitely won't hesitate to contact you again." Grenade-throwing senior immortal bared his white teeth at Zhao Kai with his trademark smile. "Very well, senior. It just so happens that I also have something to deal with," said Zhao Kai. "What is it?" Grenade-throwing senior immortal asked casually. There's a perverted preschool teacher who mistreats young children in kindergarten. He actually squeezed half a tube of wasabi into a child's mouth. He's simply insane." Zhao Kai said a little indignantly. The city takes this very seriously, and unanimously voted to send this pervert to the Internet Addiction Center for electrotherapy. In the back seat, Dharmaraja thought for a bit, then gave Zhao Kai his business card. "Tell your city leaders that I'll give them a 10% discount for electrotherapy. I promise I'll electrocute this pervert until he's tender on the inside and crispy on the outside." Zhao Kai. 10 minutes later, they arrived at their destination. Zhao Kai stopped the car and pressed the automatic door button. The side door of the commercial vehicle opened, and everyone got out one after another. Because Wang Ling was sitting in the last row, he was the last to get out. Zhao Kai stared at the car cabinet in the front passenger seat and thought for a long time. In the end, before Wang Ling got out of the car, he plucked up the courage to open the cabinet, took out 2 packets of original flavor crispy noodle snacks, and stuffed them into Wang Ling's hands. "Ling Junren, this is for you. Please accept it." Wang Ling was actually stupefied as he held the crispy noodle snacks. On the other hand, Grenade-throwing senior immortal laughed on the side and couldn't help patting Zhao Kai on the shoulder by the window. "Young man, you have a bright future ahead of you." For some reason, Zhao Kai felt overwhelmed by the favor. After watching Zhao Kai's commercial vehicle drive away, everyone calmed down and looked at the map again. "According to Ling Junren's mark, this is the place," Fatty Luo said with absolute certainty as he held up the map in his hand in the chilly wind. But as Zhao Kai had said, this area around Sanyuan Road was basically a suburb. It was covered in snow, and there wasn't even a tree to be seen. Thick snow had piled up on both sides of the road. Wang Ling looked along the road and saw that the snow was already more than 3 meters deep. "Senior Immortal, Can you tell what kind of camouflage spell this is? Fatty Luo looked at the empty street. Although he didn't see anything, he still felt that it was quite suspicious. But while they hadn't discovered anything yet, everyone could indeed sense the power of the spirit vein. This is indeed a rare cultivation paradise, as well as a land of good feng shui. Relying on the spirit vein, if a golden core cultivator goes into seclusion here, they won't have to worry about a lack of spirit energy at all, Dharmaraja said. On the side, grenade-throwing senior immortal opened his heavenly eye. After carefully observing their surroundings, he finally threw a grenade into the pile of snow in front of them. There was a loud bang, and a large amount of snow exploded in all directions. Senior immortal, what are you doing? I was just wondering if this is some kind of illusion spell. The space created by an illusion spell isn't very stable, which I can tell with my skybomb grenade. But it's very obvious that the space here is very stable. Grenade-throwing senior immortal sighed and looked at Wang Ling. Brother Ling, do you have any ideas? Wang Ling narrowed his eyes as he gazed at the snowy landscape in front of him. Naturally, he had sensed something. But before he could speak telepathically, Fang Xing had actually also sensed it. Cupping his chin in his hands, he walked up to the front, his long legs standing out in contrast to the white snow. The aura is here, but I can't see anything, so I rule out the possibility of an illusion spell. Combined with the spirit vein under our feet, I thought of a camouflage spell. Seniors, have you ever heard of a holy array that requires a spirit vein to work? Chapter 284. If it was the ice crystal array at work, then the current situation could be explained. This was a magic array that could replicate an area into a mirror space. After successfully replicating the area, everyone could hide in the replicated mirror space. It was perfect for hiding. However, the ice crystal array had a huge drawback, which was that it consumed a lot of spiritual power. Since the beginning of the holy array, there would always be a spiritual vein under the feet to make up for the large amount of spiritual power consumed during the operation of the array. But Salian Jinren still had some doubts. But I remember that the previous owner of this ice crystal array was Immortal Shipai. Immortal Shipai's secret hideout back then had a spirit vein underneath it. He used the ice crystal array to create a mirror space so that when he was injured, he could escape into the space many times to recuperate. Salian Jinren continued. But as far as I know, when Immortal Shipai was arrested back then, the holy array spirit of this ice crystal array was handed over to the state along with the spirit vein. Why would it appear in Immortal Mansion's hands now? Wang Ling also frowned, feeling that this was very strange. But looking at the current situation, Wang Ling was very sure that the camouflage in front of them was caused by the legendary ice crystal array. Because the mirror space created by the ice crystal array wasn't an illusion, it was very difficult to detect. Even the most sophisticated modern instruments might not be able to effectively detect the fluctuations. But this couldn't fool Wang Ling's eyes. When he had stepped onto Sanyuan Road, he had actually already made up his mind. But there was something else he was also puzzled about, and that was Fang Xing. He felt that Fang Xing was unusually sensitive to the ice crystal array. Just how rich are these people from Immortal Mansion? Dharmaraja couldn't help shuddering. This Immortal Mansion's foundation was a little scary. Even something like a holy array had appeared. When Senior Immortal and I were trapped in an illusion game before, this bunch of people even brought out an itinerant immortal array spirit. So it's actually not strange that they have a holy array. Fatty Lua waved his palm leaf fan. He actually had the second half of what he wanted to say. Although that itinerant immortal array spirit had been directly chopped to pieces by Ling Jinren's Lord Jinka's sword. But before he said the second half of the sentence, Fatty Luo thought it over carefully and finally kept silent. Because he had suddenly sensed a powerful wave of spirit energy erupting from Ling Jinren, who was next to him. He was so frightened that he didn't dare speak. This wave of spirit energy was mixed with powerful spirit pressure, and it continuously condensed with his heavenly eye as its center. The powerful energy caused the nearby snow to continuously melt, and spirit energy fluctuations rippled out from Wang Ling's pupils, causing even the ground to tremble. To break the mirror image of the ice crystal array, You'll need to gather a tremendous amount of spirit energy. Grenade-throwing senior immortal and the others took the initiative to move away from Wang Ling. This spiritual pressure was so immense that even standing next to Wang Ling made it hard to breathe. As expected, Ling Junren's strength was terrifying. Dharmaraja was utterly shaken. He saw that Wang Ling's entire body was trembling slightly because of this immense spirit energy, and the air seemed to distort. If someone didn't know better, they would definitely think that Wang Ling was angry. Fatty Luo felt that this scene was familiar, and he nudged grenade-throwing senior immortal next to him with his elbow and asked, "Senior immortal, do you feel like you've seen this trembling and inexplicable pressure before? Or have you seen it before?" I think so." Grenade-throwing senior immortal nodded. "Have you seen the TV series Shao Family Compound? The Shao clan invested in it." "No. Let's go take a look." When the main character yells out the phrase, "The river flows east for 30 years. The river flows west for 30 years," and clamors to break off the engagement, the tension in his emotions and the cries in his heart are very similar to what Brother Ling is feeling right now. This spirit energy had been condensing for a long time, and even Wang Ling felt that the energy accumulated in his heavenly eye was simply like the power of prehistoric times. "Everyone be careful." Behind him, the faces of the others couldn't help turning serious as they set up magic barriers one after another. About 5 seconds later, everyone saw Ling Junren's heavenly eye abruptly shoot out 2 beams of light, as thick as horned dragons. They directly hit the space in front of them, and as if they were going to break through the dimensional wall, they crashed into something with a loud bang. If grenade-throwing senior immortal had to describe it, the impact of this scene was like the first time he had seen the destructive light of a tyrant carp dragon. Almost at the same instant that the all-seeing cannon struck the invisible spatial wall, everyone could vaguely see that cracks had already appeared in the void. "Is it going to break?" Grenade-throwing senior immortal narrowed his eyes as the light around them gradually dimmed along with the intense beams of light. There was a burning smell. Everyone realized that a hole the size of a person had actually been burned open in the originally invisible spatial wall. Fatty Luo and Dharmaraja's jaws dropped. They had thought that Ling Junren was just trying, and had never expected him to actually be able to break the spatial wall. This was a mirror space replicated by a holy array, and the spatial wall was invisible. To break it open, one had to gather enough spirit energy to find a crack in the spatial wall, and then think of a way to break through it. Putting aside the problem of gathering spirit energy, it was impossible for an ordinary person to find a crack in the spatial wall. It could be said that Ling Junren's strength had once again surpassed everyone's understanding. It was already very difficult to find a spatial wall, but he could actually burn it open. This kind of shock was no less than when Immortal Toya had seen Wang Ling close the gate between worlds with just one hand back then. "So Brother Ling, does this move of yours have a name?" Grenade-throwing senior immortal asked. Wang Ling shook his head. This was just an energy beam that was naturally fired after the heavenly eye had gathered its spirit energy to its highest form. The difficulty lay in controlling the accumulation of energy. Only by concentrating a high density of spirit energy molecules into one point could it unleash its greatest power. Of course, there was a major condition for this move, and that was that only those with sage bodies could use it. Otherwise, when the energy beam was halfway done, their eyeballs might explode first. "Why don't you give it a name for such a powerful move?" Grenade-throwing senior immortal asked. Fatty Luo, Melancholic Sorrow Cannon? Immortal Toya, the Demon Eye of Death? Silian Junren, who gets pregnant with its glare? Feng Xing, Life Form Disintegration Ray? Wang Ling, not bad, not bad. Anything else? Grenade-throwing senior immortal nodded. Is there anything that's a little more concise and domineering? The 2 energy beams that Brother Ling shot out of his eyes just now. Didn't you feel anything at all? At that moment, Dharmaraja rubbed his chin and scratched his head before smiling a little wretchedly. "I've thought of one." Grenade-throwing senior immortal. "Let's hear it." Dharmaraja, double, long, enter, whole, everyone. Chapter 285. Everyone was instantly stupefied by Dharmaraja's sudden obscenity. Even Silian Junren, a veteran female driver, who had galloped through the cultivation circle for many years, couldn't help trembling slightly. It could be seen that this obscenity had already surpassed the limits of what a human being could bear. Even soul formation cultivators were horrified and trembling. Double long entering cave. What kind of operation was this? Why is everyone so stunned? Is it because I didn't come up with a good name? Dharmaraja spread his hands helplessly. They were all adult cultivators. It didn't matter if their words were a little dirty. Actually, I have something even more domineering. Do you want to hear it? Shut up, old thief. Before Wang Ling and Fang Xing could say anything, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and the others had already shouted in unison. Fang Xing. Wang Ling. At that moment, the space wall had already been blasted open by the Heavenly Eye's energy beam. The hole was more than a meter in radius, and was big enough for a person to pass through. It burned open on all four sides of the space wall, releasing an unpleasant charred smell. Wang Ling frowned slightly as he stared at the cave. He had thought that his blast just now should have been able to completely shatter the space wall. But he hadn't expected it to only blast open a hole the size of a person. Although this was already incredible enough in the eyes of Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and the others, Wang Ling still didn't think it was enough. The enemies he encountered now were really getting more and more difficult to deal with. Sighing in his heart, he subconsciously reached out to touch the Dao Talisman seal tied to his right arm. He didn't know whether the day would come when he would have to remove the talisman seal. But in his heart, he hoped that it would never happen. Let's go in. It wasn't easy for Brother Ling to burn open a hole like this. But everyone stay vigilant, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said after deep thought as he looked at the invisible, but distinct barrier in front of them. After all, this ice crystal array was a holy array, which was of a higher level than the 5 elements great array, which had sealed the old devil back then. Furthermore, the array spirit most likely had an automatic protection mechanism. Once an intruder stepped into this space, it was highly likely that the power of the array would scatter them in the air. In fact, it was just as Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had expected. Wang Ling was the first to step into the space. The scene in front of him rapidly changed as the space twisted, and the mirror turned upside down. In the distance, Wang Ling saw that the road sign for Sanyuan Road had turned into Lu Yuan San. When he stepped on the ground again, he confirmed that he was in the mirror space set up by the ice crystal array. A white-clothed young man landed steadily in front of him. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal happened to be in the same space as Wang Ling, looking at the scene in front of him. His face was full of astonishment, and he couldn't help exclaiming, "Holy shit!" At this moment, the originally empty Sanyuan Road was filled with all kinds of dazzling palaces. Some of them were even floating in the air like immortal residences. Wang Ling and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could already see dozens of sky palaces, as well as a large number of cultivation facilities on the side of the road. The materials of these buildings were not simple. Even the bricks and tiles were filled with a large amount of spirit energy and had the ability to regenerate themselves. They were not ordinary items. This immortal talisman is really King Rich. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help cursing in his heart. Anyone would be envious of this kind of foundation. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal thought of a story. In ancient times, a poor man had fallen into a valley. After surviving, he discovered the golden village at the bottom of the valley. From the stone tablet at the village entrance to the building tiles inside, even the straw piled up in each family's backyard was made of gold. Now, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt like he had fallen into the golden village. Because this was the mirror world, everything here was inverted. Even the direction of the clouds in the sky was different. It was only time that was synchronized with the outside world. The white-clothed young man looked up at the sky. It was already dusk, and the sky was about to turn dark. But what was strange was that the sky at that moment was actually dotted with stars, like a river of stars covering the entire horizon. The white-clothed young man pointed at the sky. "Brother Ling, look, the stars." Wang Ling. But it wasn't long before the white-clothed young man's hand weakly lowered, because he noticed that these stars seemed to be growing larger at a speed visible to the naked eye. Was it an illusion? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal took a deep breath. Then he opened his eyes again. The stars, which had been the size of sesame seeds earlier, had actually become the size of millstones. What bullsh *T stars? These were F *King spirits activated by the Holy Array. It was only when these shining stars drew near that grenade-throwing senior immortal realized what they were. They were transparent spirits that looked like souls, but their bodies shone with light. As these guardian spirits fell from the sky, they swiftly gathered together and finally transformed into a huge spirit beast, which directly landed in front of Wang Ling and grenade-throwing senior immortal. It was a two-headed fish with 2 feet and a mouth filled with shark teeth. As soon as it landed on the ground, it began to roar crazily. There were 2 very long dragon whiskers at the side of its mouth that fluttered in the wind, giving off a domineering aura. The corner of grenade-throwing senior immortal's mouth twitched. This guardian spirit was definitely from the Pisces constellation, right? Alright, now wasn't the time to think about this. Without saying anything else, grenade-throwing senior immortal directly threw a skybomb grenade into the big fish's mouth. There was a loud bang, but the big fish was completely fine. It just clumsily opened its mouth to spit out thick smoke from the skybomb grenade. This is at least an itinerant immortal level array guardian spirit. Grenade-throwing senior immortal frowned with a serious expression. After all, this mirror space was a product of the Holy Array, so it was very normal for an itinerant immortal level array guardian spirit to appear. Furthermore, the most troublesome thing about these guardian spirits was that they had thick skin and strong self-healing abilities. If you couldn't kill them with one punch, there really wasn't anything you could do. Roar! The two-headed fish roared loudly. Its body glittered with starlight, and each of the spirits that made up its body radiated light. Grenade-throwing senior immortal looked at the big fish with a helpless expression. In the end, he could only turn to Wang Ling for help. Brother Ling, can you sing Twinkle Little Star? Wang Ling stared at the big fish for 3 seconds. He sighed. Then, he took a slight step forward and leapt up. His palm was like a spirit knife as he chopped down at the starlight fish. Rip! There was nothing to block this slash. At that moment, grenade-throwing senior immortal clearly heard an earth-shattering tearing sound. A second ago, the big starlight fish that was still roaring. Now, it had become a steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers. Chapter 286. At the same time, there was a secret underground palace beneath the palaces that stretched along San Yuan Road. In the underground palace, a Taoist in red held a silver longsword. Starlight danced on the sword, and a miniature version of the 12 stars array was laid out on the blade. The Taoist in red pointed at the sword, and his fingertips slid along the 12 stars array one by one. When his fingers slid to the constellation Pisces, there was a loud bang, and the light of the entire array quickly dimmed. The Taoist in red frowned slightly. It seems that the ones who invaded Immortal Mansion this time are indeed hard to deal with. I just saw the guardian spirit of the 12 stars palaces I set up. The guardian spirit of the constellation Pisces died in battle, and its 2 heads were split in half. On the side, the Eastern Branch chief holding the cage was startled. These people actually found this place. Otherwise, do you think it's so easy to catch this sword? This is a strategy of loosening the reins only to grasp them better. The goal is to confirm Immortal Mansion's final stronghold. The Taoist in red chuckled. The Eastern Branch chief turned pale with fright. Then what should we do now? It doesn't matter. The Taoist in red waved his hand and stared at the cage in the Eastern Branch chief's hand. Since they've come knocking, we'll just clean them up. It will also save me the trouble of erasing the connection between this spirit sword and its original owner. As long as its owner dies, this sword will become ownerless. If I may be so bold as to ask, Master, do you have the confidence to deal with this group of people? Asked the Eastern Branch chief. They're just a bunch of ants. The Master of Immortal Mansion chuckled and raised the star sword in his hand. They'll have to expend a lot of energy and spirit energy just to deal with my 12 stars palace's array guardian spirit. The guardian spirit of the constellation Pisces is clumsy and the weakest. I don't believe that the other guardian spirits will be so easy to deal with. As soon as he said that, the star sword exploded again. Bang bang bang. Bang bang bang. Bang 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 bang, bang 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 bang. The Taoist in red was stupefied by the 11 explosions in a row. Then, the Taoist in red saw that the starlight on the entire star sword was extinguished in an instant. The Taoist in red, the Eastern Branch Chief. Master, what's going on? The Taoist in red said. It's almost the new year. I'll set off some firecrackers for you in advance, the Eastern Branch Chief. Master, who are you trying to fool? There are still 6 months until the first day of the new year. The Taoist in red. The scene fell into an awkward silence. 10 seconds later, the red-clothed Taoist narrowed his eyes. Pass down my order. The entire immortal abode is to be on high alert. Once suspicious people are seen, they are to be eliminated on the spot. There will be no mercy. There were times when grenade-throwing senior immortal felt that following Wang Ling around was actually quite a boring thing. This was like taking a selfie. Most people wouldn't take a selfie with someone who was more good-looking than them. It would be best if they could set off the other person. And now, grenade-throwing senior immortal felt that he was the perfect foil for Wang Ling. In less than 5 minutes, the guardian spirits of the 12-star palaces had been completely annihilated. As soon as the spirit bodies that had gathered in the air formed the array guardian spirits on the ground, Wang Ling smashed them to pieces with one punch. Among the guardian spirits of the 12-star palaces, the one who had it the worst was none other than Virgo. When Virgo's guardian spirit had rushed down, it had taken a very long time to arrange the spirit bodies in an orderly manner in the air. In the end, before it could completely form, Wang Ling had punched through it with one punch. But now wasn't the time to relax. Because in the process of defeating these guardian spirits just now, Wang Ling had realized that their structure wasn't as simple as grenade-throwing senior immortal had imagined. Although these guardian spirits had been automatically activated by the holy array, there had to be a magic weapon behind them that controlled them. Wang Ling personally felt that, given the Master of Immortal Abode's fanaticism for spirit swords, the magic weapon that controlled the guardian spirits was probably a spirit sword. In other words, although these guardian spirits had been defeated for the time being, they hadn't truly died. As long as the spirit sword wasn't destroyed, when the sword was full of spirit energy again, the guardian spirits would make a comeback. Wang Ling directly told grenade-throwing senior immortal this speculation telepathically. I think Brother Ling's speculation is very reasonable. Grenade-throwing senior immortal nodded in sudden realization. The commotion just now had been a little big, and grenade-throwing senior immortal was a little worried. We can't stay here for long. If we stay outside, we'll definitely be attacked again by the next round of guardian spirits. Brother Ling, we have to think of a way to sneak in first. The two of them were about to move out when the door of the palace up ahead suddenly opened, and 2 women wearing red veils and blue Taoist robes came out. Wang Ling immediately realized that these 2 people were probably from Immortal Abode. To be able to stay in Immortal Abode's main stronghold, their positions definitely weren't low, and their cultivation levels were also very high. At the very least, they were a little stronger than the Eastern Branch Chief. Both women wore veils, and looked to be about 24 or 25 years old. But they were old cultivators who had been cultivating for 1,000 years. Since most cultivators knew how to retain their looks, there was actually no point in judging someone's age from their appearance. The most common way to judge an aura was to sense it with one's spiritual senses, and determine one's cultivation level from the intensity of the aura. Wang Ling's 6 senses were sharp. As soon as these 2 female cultivators appeared, he had already sensed that they were about 2,600 years old. They were certainly stronger than the Eastern Branch Chief, but they weren't worthy of the title of perfected person, and their talent indeed couldn't be considered good. Grenade-throwing senior immortal's cultivation level was exactly 2,000 years. If Wang Ling gave him another 300 years to cultivate, he would have more than enough time to become a perfected person. The 2 red-veiled women stared at Wang Ling for a while, and one of them, who obviously had an internet celebrity face, frowned and said, "The intruders that Master was talking about are the 2 of you, right?" The other oval-faced female cultivator on the side reminded her, "Sister Beauty, be careful. The guardian spirits are at least itinerant immortal level, and they definitely have some tricks up their sleeves. Wang Ling and grenade-throwing senior immortal were both blank beauty? Was that a Taoist name? It felt a little weird. Grenade-throwing senior immortal was a little curious and looked at the internet celebrity face. Beauty, is that your Taoist name? Is there a problem? The female cultivator with the internet celebrity face snorted. Let me tell you, I'm called Beauty, and the one standing next to me is my little sister, Discount. If you dare say we aren't beautiful, I'll break all 3 of your legs. TCH. Grenade-throwing senior immortal felt a slight chill in his crotch. Wang Ling carefully looked these 2 female cultivators up and down. He didn't know if it was because his sense of beauty had deteriorated, or if there were too many faces like this on the internet nowadays. He just felt that these 2 female cultivators really weren't very good looking. Their faces weren't as fair as Jinka's, their hair wasn't as black as grenade-throwing's, and their legs weren't as long as Fang Xing's. Of course, they weren't completely worthless. Chapter 287. Grenade-throwing senior immortal thought these 2 female cultivators were pretty weird. He took out his phone to take a few photos, but as soon as the phone's camera flashed, the 2 female cultivators turned pale with shock. One of the female cultivators with the face of an internet celebrity immediately covered her face. What kind of hidden weapon is this? Grenade-throwing senior immortal was stunned. Although there were still a lot of old seniors in the cultivation circle who clung to dogma and refused to use modern technology, they still knew what a phone was. Grenade-throwing senior immortal simply flipped the phone over and showed the 2 female cultivators the photo he had just taken. The female cultivator with the face of an internet celebrity was shocked by her own appearance. What kind of magic treasure is this? It can actually save images. The oval-faced female cultivator next to her also had an amazed expression on her face. Sister Beautiful, look. Your skin seems to be a lot more delicate in this magic treasure. This magic treasure also has the effect of retaining your looks? This development made Wang Ling and grenade-throwing senior immortal sweat. That was just the phone's built-in skin polishing function. It was just a phone, but these 2 female cultivators were stupefied for a long time. After a full 2 minutes, the oval-faced female cultivator said in a low voice, "Well, Sister Beautiful, could this magic treasure be the modern technology they were talking about?" "It should be." The female cultivator with the face of an internet celebrity nodded very seriously. "Are you really a senior member of Immortal Mansion?" Grenade-throwing senior immortal was starting to doubt their identities a little. Even if they were strong, they shouldn't be this ignorant about modern technology. How long had it been since the spirit energy information era? "We were sent here when we were very young, and we've never left. This is also a rule of our sect. Inner sect disciples must cut off all contact with the outside world. I only heard the word technology when people from the outer sect came to the headquarters to report on the situation," the oval-faced female cultivator replied. It was a very short explanation, but it was actually a long story. It was only later that Wang Ling, grenade-throwing senior immortal, and the others learned that Immortal Mansion's inner sect disciples were all women with relatively good talent. Like child brides, they were selected by Immortal Mansion at a young age and sent to Immortal Mansion after their parents signed off on them as guardians. Every day, they had to recite scriptures designated by Immortal Mansion, and if they couldn't, they would be punished with a dragon whip or a ruler. In addition, they also had to undergo special training in cultivation. Every year, there were people who died during the Immortal Mansion's training, and only those who survived could truly become inner sect disciples. The difference was that Immortal Mansion's inner sect disciples didn't need to cultivate the Panwu Immortal technique, but at the same time, they couldn't come into contact with technology from the outside world. Most importantly, Immortal Mansion's inner sect disciples were all female. At this moment, for the 2 female disciples in the village who had just connected to the internet, the temptation of a mobile phone could be said to be quite great, completely not inferior to a first-grade magic treasure. "If I gave you this phone, would you be willing to help us slip through?" Grenade-throwing senior immortal asked as he bared his white teeth symbolically. "Are you kidding me? The female cultivator with the face of an internet celebrity snorted. As long as we kill you, won't everything on your body be ours? Grenade-throwing senior immortal kept smiling. Is there no room for negotiation? No. The two female cultivators waved their hands. All right. Grenade-throwing senior immortal sighed, and turned to look at Wang Ling. Brother Ling, hurry up and pour these two aunties a cup of cappuccino. Who are you calling aunties? The two female cultivators were furious. In the next moment they looked like they were going to rush over. Unfortunately, before the two of them could get close, Wang Ling had already made the first move. There were two muffled bam-bam sounds. In an instant, the two female cultivators' faces were directly smashed by Wang Ling's friendly face-shattering fist, and they fell to the ground, bleeding from all orifices. Wang Ling blew at his smoking fist and sighed in his heart. They were too weak. AI, why did you do this? Grenade-throwing senior immortal bent down to check their breathing, and only breathed a sigh of relief when he found that they weren't dead. Fortunately, although they hadn't spoken much just now, Grenade-throwing senior immortal felt that the inner sect disciples of Immortal Mansion were all victims. They had been sent here from a young age to be trained to be 1-in-a-million killing machines. It wasn't easy for them to survive. Nowadays, there was a perpetrator for every grievance, and a debtor for every debt. Whoever had started this ill-fated relationship would be the one to end it. Grenade-throwing senior immortal asked. Brotherling, can you see if you can read their memories and find the location of the master of Immortal Mansion? Wang Ling shook his head. He had already searched the area, but hadn't found any useful clues. Although these two were inner sect disciples of Immortal Mansion, their ranks were still too low. Jinka's aura had disappeared not long after Wang Ling had found Sanyuan Road. Wang Ling guessed that the master of Immortal Mansion had probably used some method or magic treasure to hide Jinka's aura. At this point, Wang Ling wouldn't be surprised if the master of Immortal Mansion took out an ancient godly weapon. After all, from the very beginning, the master of Immortal Mansion had been a very troublesome enemy. Looks like I'll have to find a way to sneak in and find someone with a higher rank. Grenade-throwing senior immortal rubbed his chin as his thoughts spun endlessly. Then, he stared at the two corpses of the female cultivators on the ground, and his eyes suddenly lit up. This look. Wang Ling had a bad feeling about it. Brother Ling, come and help me. Grenade-throwing senior immortal dragged the two of them into the palace. This was the exclusive palace of the two sisters, Beauty and Discount. Apart from them, there was no one else. A moment later, Wang Ling looked at him and bowed to the two female cultivators lying on the ground. My apologies, fellow Taoists. Then he actually started to directly take off his clothes. Wang Ling was utterly flabbergasted. In broad daylight, the Grand Great Death-courting senior of the cultivation circle was actually plotting against two women. Could it be that he had eaten too much broccoli and wanted to start eating meat? Grenade-throwing senior immortal had just taken off one of the female cultivator's belts when he felt Wang Ling's burning gaze on him. He couldn't help raising his head and sighing. Brother Ling, we've known each other for so long. Do you think I'm the kind of person who would take advantage of others? Wang Ling. Grenade-throwing senior immortal looked as if he had discovered a whole new world just by undoing the belt around his waist. This is the first time I've realized that women's Taoist robes even have built-in bras. Brother Ling, do you know how to take them off? Wang Ling was silent. After studying it for a full 5 minutes, the white-robed young man finally figured out the internal structure of the female Taoist robe. He had never thought that the inlaid bra strap of the Taoist robe was actually set with a talisman, and only the two female cultivators could undo it with their own fingers. Grenade-throwing senior immortal had to pose for the two female cultivators for a long time before he was able to turn their hands over and undo their clothes. Success! After successfully taking off one Taoist robe, the young man in white looked as if he had obtained a priceless treasure. Then, he directly tossed the other one into Wang Ling's hands. Brother Ling, catch. This one is for you. After saying that, he started to take off the second female cultivator's clothes. Wang Ling. Grenade-throwing senior immortal. Don't just stand there, quickly put them on. We'll sneak in as women. Chapter 288. Wang Ling changed his clothes in the palace of the two old aunties, Beauty and Discount. Because these two female cultivators had been cut off from the outside world. Even the mirrors in the palace were bronze mirrors. Wang Ling just stood in front of the mirror and glanced at it out of the corner of his eye, and he instantly felt the urge to die. He absolutely couldn't let anyone else see this scene. Wonderful! Wonderful! Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal exclaimed as he clapped his hands. Brother Ling, this is the first time I've realized that you're actually so cute. The young man in white never expected Wang Ling to be wearing this azure Taoist robe, and the red gauze the two female cultivators used to cover their faces to actually fit him so well. He wanted to take out his phone to take a photo, but before he could do so, Wang Ling glanced at it out of the corner of his eye, and the phone instantly crashed. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's expression froze, and a look of pity immediately appeared on his face. A picture of Ling Junren in female clothing was something that could only be encountered by chance, and could only be kept as a collection. It might become priceless in the future. Unfortunately, he had the heart, but he didn't have the guts. He had just wanted to take out his phone to check the time. It really had just been to check the time. In the end, such a small movement had completely ruined his phone. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sighed in his heart, and took out the entire phone from his pocket. He only took out the SIM card and memory card. I just bought this phone. Wang Ling looked at the length of the phone. This was a new Xingli brand phone, and the body alone was 30 centimeters long. Then, the young man in white threw the ruined phone at the two female cultivators on the ground. Sorry for the offense. Although this phone is already ruined, it might still work if you fix it. Even if it can't be fixed, it's still better than cucumbers. Wang Ling. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Brother Ling, we should be able to sneak in now, but why do I feel like we still owe something? Saying this, the young man in white turned his gaze to the pile of fruit on the tribute table in the palace. With a crooked finger, he grabbed 2 apples and stuffed them into his chest, then turned his head to look at Wang Ling. Brother Ling, do you want some? Wang Ling. Go to hell. At the same time, in the underground palace, the red-clothed Taoist frowned slightly. Have you located all the intruders? Immortal Mansion's Taoist robes were all made with special materials, and these materials just happened to act as verification codes. After an outsider invaded, they could use the power of the holy ice crystal formation to lock onto the unfamiliar aura and quickly find the intruder's location. I've just locked onto the general location. But, the Eastern Branch Chief replied. But what? Chapter 289. Taoist robes were different from ordinary clothes. They had very good stretchability and extensibility, and could be worn as long as you squeezed them a little. In Fatty Luo's view, they were like a girl's breasts. They would always be there if you squeezed them a little. Dharmaraja used his innate lightning to knock out 2 female cultivators who were passing by, and dragged them into an alley. He found a secluded spot, and laid the 2 female cultivators flat on the ground. Then he took off their clothes. It's so tight, Brother Luo, my chest feels so tight. I can't breathe. Dharmaraja felt like the blue Taoist robe was wrapped tightly around him like a dumpling, and it was very uncomfortable whether it was his chest or his buttocks. Fatty Luo's situation wasn't much better than Dharmaraja's. If you feel like you can't breathe, use the turtle breathing spell. Can we do it like this? Fatty Luo was silent for a while. I don't know, but at least after we change our clothes, we won't be tracked by the holy array. Now we can think of a way to meet up with Ling Junren and the others, Fatty Luo said. If we run into anyone on the way, I'll have to trouble Brother Dharmaraja to knock them out. Before we find the master of Immortal Mansion, we should avoid fighting and conserve our strength. Lord Jinka should be fine, right? I can't say for now. Fatty Luo's first impression was that the Eastern Branch Chief's spirit-subduing flag hadn't been able to restrain Jinka. All of this had just been a game of chess for Ling Junren to lure out the master of Immortal Mansion. But after witnessing the legendary Ice Crystal Holy Array, Fatty Luo had a deeper understanding of Immortal Mansion's heritage. Perhaps this master of Immortal Mansion had other tricks up his sleeve? To tell the truth, Fatty Luo was a little worried. If Lord Jinka is in his complete form, there's nothing to be afraid of at all. But the problem is that he doesn't have a scabbard, and only has a protective layer of sword chi that automatically condenses around him. But from another perspective, since Ling Junren is sending Lord Jinka to lure the snake out of its hole, I think he must be confident. After Fatty Luo finished speaking, he looked up at the sky. The sky was already completely dark at this time. He could feel the 12 Stars Palace's array guardian spirits, which had been destroyed earlier, reforming. I wonder how Immortal Toya, Cailan Jinren and Brother Feng Xing are doing. Fatty Luo looked at the sky with a profound look in his eyes. Not everyone could withstand the repeated attacks of the 12 Astral Palace's array guardian spirits. When the next wave of guardian spirits reformed, they would definitely find the other invaders and kill them. Previously, whether it was Fatty Luo or the others, they had all thought that this trip would be relatively easy. But after entering Immortal Mansion's stronghold, they deeply felt the dangers of Immortal Mansion. Whether he could survive or not, it all depended on his luck. On the other side, after changing into women's Taoist robes, Wang Ling and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal weren't in a hurry to leave. Instead, they searched the palaces of the two female cultivators, Beauty and Discount. When Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had come in through the space wall earlier, he had already noticed that the bricks and tiles used to build the palaces here weren't ordinary. They were filled with large amounts of spirit energy and had the power to repair themselves. Bricks with self-recovery ability, what kind of concept was that? This was equivalent to hiding a Dharmaraja in each brick, and this kind of self-recovery method was even more convenient than Dharmaraja, using the godly thunder inheritance to re-weld the bricks together. Brother Ling, I feel that the master of Immortal Mansion's identity isn't ordinary. The young man in white frowned and touched the bricks embedded in the stone pillars of the palace. After touching them for less than 3 seconds, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's hand drew back, as if it had been electrocuted. Just now, he had actually sensed the fluctuations of nomological laws hidden in the bricks, which had wrapped around his finger like a viper and bitten him hard. It's actually the power of nomological laws? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was a little astonished. This meant that the master of Immortal Mansion's strength was very likely at true immortal level. But he was a little puzzled. The nomological laws were set up too broadly, to the extent that each brick contained a trace of nomological laws. Even a true immortal might not be able to set them up like this. On the side, Wang Ling narrowed his eyes and couldn't help a drop of cold sweat trickling down his forehead. According to the normal list of realms, only those at true immortal level could freely use nomological laws. Of course, that didn't rule out the fact that there were a very small number of evildoers who had the strength to use nomological laws before they reached true immortal level. Comparatively speaking, however, true immortals could use nomological laws more smoothly. But to be able to spread the power of nomological laws out like a spider's web, even general, you would find it difficult to do so. In Wang Ling's view, this power already surpassed that of true immortal. But this probably wasn't the master of Immortal Mansion's own power. If he had this ability, Jinka would have changed owners long ago, and he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Wang Ling couldn't help sighing in his heart. Sure enough, resolving this matter as soon as possible was the right thing to do. If things dragged on like this, Immortal Mansion would be a ticking time bomb, and no one could say for sure when it would completely detonate. He told Grenade, throwing his thoughts telepathically. After hearing this, the young man in white was blank for a moment. Brother Ling, are you suspecting that there's another power behind Immortal Mansion? And that this power is directly related to the master of Immortal Mansion? In fact, halfway through Wang Ling's words, the young man in white already had a guess in his heart. Staring at the stone pillar in front of him, he took a step back. Brother Ling, do you have a way to extract a brick from this stone pillar? Crack. With his eyes fixed on the stone pillar, Wang Ling's fingers instantly turned into claws and directly stuck into the cracks around the brick. Very quickly, just like Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had felt when he had been electrocuted, he felt the nomological power in the brick attack his fingertips. Wang Ling frowned as his fingertips felt numb and itchy. But it was very light, and actually a little comfortable. It was a little like a kissing fish in a hot spring nibbling at his fingertips. Wang Ling gripped the brick tightly in front of him, and then slowly increased the strength in his hand. He extracted the brick effortlessly. Let me see. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't dare touch the brick, and could only move closer to take a look. Very quickly, a look of sudden realization appeared on his face. Sure enough, Wang Ling examined the brick carefully. Apart from the nomological laws surging inside, and the patterns on its surface, he didn't see anything unusual. But he felt that the patterns on the brick were a little familiar, as if he had seen them somewhere before. Brother Ling, do you know about familiars? Chapter 290. Wang Ling had long heard rumors about tamed demons, but he hadn't expected to encounter them so soon. With the mark left by the tamed demon on the brick as evidence, it could be said that the relationship between Immortal Mansion and the stone demon was now official. Summoning a tamed demon was also strictly prohibited under Huaxiao Nation's laws. Like the rule that one was not allowed to inherit the Taoist tradition, it was also listed as a crime of anti-cultivation opportunism. But the tamed demon wasn't the key issue right now. How on earth did the master of Immortal Mansion know about the magic array used to summon them? This was something worth thinking about. While he was thinking, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal thought of something. There was a time when there was a widespread rumor on the market about a magic array used to summon a tamed demon. In the end, it was discovered that it was nothing more than a hoax. Some criminals disguised a transmission array as a magic array and tricked a lot of people into throwing antiques into it. Wang Ling. But a lot of people only know one thing about a magic array. Not all so-called antiques or relics can be used as a medium to summon a tamed demon. If you want to summon a tamed demon, the relic itself must contain a huge amount of residual spirit energy. For example, if Dharmaraja used the godly thunder inheritance as a medium in conjunction with the magic array, the summoning would definitely be successful, said Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Hearing this, Wang Ling nodded. After all, the godly thunder inheritance was a holy relic left behind by the Thunder clan. But when all is said and done, this is against the law. Even if he knew about the magic array, Dharmaraja wouldn't do such a thing. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sighed and spread his hands. Brother Ling, keep this brick for now. This brick alone is enough evidence to convict the master of Immortal Mansion of a serious crime. Furthermore, the viciousness of this matter has already surpassed that of that old devil. Wang Ling put the brick away with his vision screen, and the two of them were about to leave when they suddenly heard hurried footsteps in front of the two female cultivators' residence. Someone's here. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hurriedly dragged the two female cultivators into the inner hall. A few seconds later, a female cultivator's voice came directly from the door. Beauty, discount, are you there? Elder Xing wants to summon us to discuss how to fight the invaders. Should I open the door, Brother Ling? While Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was hesitating, the female cultivator directly pushed the door open and entered. Wang Ling noticed that this female cultivator was wearing an orange Taoist robe and had squinting eyes. Based on the memories he had retrieved from the two female cultivators, he immediately knew that this person should be a true disciple of Immortal Mansion, a level higher than an inner sect disciple. The elder-level Taoist robes were gay purple. The slit-eyed female cultivator saw the two of them from a distance of a dozen meters. At this moment, the white-clothed youth felt a buzzing sound in his head. What to do? Am I going to be exposed? After a few seconds of silence, the slit-eyed female cultivator exclaimed, Wow! Beautiful! Discount! How did you become like this? Did you go for plastic surgery behind Master's back? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. The slit-eyed female cultivator took a closer look, her gaze fixed on him as she walked up and down. You're offering a discount, aren't you? Look at your oval-shaped face. Wang Ling. The female cultivator looked at Wang Ling. Which face-shaping technician in the mansion did you get for your face? I think that your new dead fish eyes are quite unique. Not bad, not bad. Wang Ling. After that, The female cultivator looked at grenade-throwing senior immortal again and rubbed her chin. Beautiful, did you get a height enhancement spell and breast implants? By the way, why is senior sister Yixian looking for us? Grenade-throwing senior immortal used spirit energy to change the voice in his throat and imitated the online celebrity face from before to talk to the female cultivator in front of him. He looked at the nameplate on the female cultivator's waist, which was engraved with the name, Yixian, and it was obvious that this was her Taoist name. Grenade-throwing senior immortal recalled that the online celebrity face and the oval face also had nameplates on their waists, but they hadn't taken them off when they had changed their clothes. It looks like I'll have to bring my nameplate with me later, otherwise it'll definitely raise suspicions, grenade-throwing senior immortal thought. Although, it already looked quite suspicious now. Elder Xing wants to summon all the inner sect disciples. I'm here to inform them. This senior sister Yixian stared at the disguised Wang Ling and grenade-throwing senior immortal and said very seriously, "This is a very serious matter, and Elder Xing wants you to go as soon as possible. Do you know the flat top of Yuntai Pavilion? Gather there in 10 minutes. Okay. Senior sister Yixian. Don't be late." The slit-eyed female cultivator smiled. With that said, the slit-eyed female cultivator went to inform the next palace. Grenade-throwing senior immortal looked at her receding figure and couldn't help sweating. Their faces had been so close just now, almost touching, but in the end, she hadn't realized that they were in disguise. It seemed that not all slit-eyed people were monsters, and slit-eyed people were really blind. Following the directions, Wang Ling and grenade-throwing senior immortal arrived at the flat top of Yuntai Pavilion 10 minutes later. Wang Ling didn't know the specific location of Yuntai Pavilion, but when this senior sister had come to the palace to inform them, he had left a spiritual mark on her. That senior sister Yixian from before had already arrived, and was standing at the very top of the flat top, followed by a female elder in a purple Taoist robe. At that moment, about 100 inner sect disciples had gathered on the flat top, and Wang Ling and grenade-throwing senior immortal were among them. The inner sect female disciples trembled in the face of the elder's wrath on the high platform. I did a head count just now, and realized that there are actually 2 people who haven't arrived yet. The purple-robed female elder took a deep breath and said, "The Manor Lord is furious. Furthermore, he suspects that there might already be spies among the inner sect disciples. It's very likely that those who sneaked into our immortal mansion are disguised as our disciples. But in such an urgent situation, there's actually someone who's late? Yixian, what are you doing?" The slit-eyed female cultivator trembled slightly at this stern interrogation. "This disciple is incompetent. I'm willing to accept punishment, Shifu." Naturally, punishment is inevitable. The female elder snorted. "Do you know who those 2 female disciples who haven't arrived yet are? Find them out for me. It's Little Bamboo and Little Chrysanthemum. I've clearly already informed them." The slit-eyed female cultivator was a little aggrieved. But they seem to have put on a little weight recently, so it might be a little difficult for them to climb the mountain. The elder in purple was blank. Put on a little weight? Not long after this elder in purple said this, Wang Ling and grenade-throwing senior immortal saw 2 plump female cultivators walk up the steps to the top of the flat roof. Because their Taoist robes were too small, their calves were directly exposed, and the hair on their calves fluttered in the cool breeze on the top of the flat roof. Grenade-throwing senior immortal almost spat out a mouthful of blood at this scene. Chapter 291. Because of their overly frightening entrance, the 100 or so female cultivators, including the elder in purple, were dead silent for a full 3 minutes. This scene caused the purple-clothed female elder to suck in a breath of cold air. Then, she slightly tilted her head to look at the female cultivator beside her with squinted eyes. "Art courtyard. So this is Xiao Zhu and Xiao Zhu after they put on weight?" Slit-eyed, she nodded seriously. "That's right, Shifu." Then, the female elder in purple's face twitched for a long time. This was supposed to be a fish bamboo wheel that had been soaked in hot pot, and a mutated overlord flower. When Dharmaraja and Fatty Luo climbed the stairs, they could clearly sense the subtle atmosphere in the field. "Brother Luo, We haven't been discovered, have we? The fervent gazes around them, especially from the elder in purple on the platform, were like those of Mitepchan, who had discovered a criminal, and there was a hint of ferocity in her eyes. Fatty Luo sighed softly. TSK, I thought our disguise was perfect. Wang Ling now understood that these two King Kong Barbies didn't know what B was at all. In fact, if Dharmaraja and Fatty Luo hadn't appeared here, Wang Ling felt that he and grenade throwing would have been able to fish in troubled waters for a while. However, the moment these two King Kong Barbies appeared on the rooftop, their plan had already been disrupted. What kind of evildoer are you? Hurry up and surrender. The female elder in purple on the platform waved her sleeves, and two golden lights instantly streaked across her sleeves to form circles of runes that abruptly turned into a cage in the air and swiftly enveloped them. The slit-eyed female cultivator was shaken by her Shifu's vigorous attack. Shifu, what are you doing? They're all sisters. The female elder in purple unceremoniously reached out and smacked her on the head. Are you stupid? The female elder sighed in her heart. She shouldn't have sent her to inform the inner sect. Otherwise there wouldn't have been so much trouble. There was no doubt that Yixian's strength was the strongest among all the inner sanctum disciples here. Thus, she had been taken in as her direct disciple a long time ago. However, her only weakness was that she was a little stupid and blind. Given the urgency of the situation, the purple-clothed elder did not have the time to explain in detail. She only sighed and briefly said, "These two are intruders from the outside world. They must have changed into Xiaozhu and Xiaoju's clothes to sneak in." At this point, the slit-eyed female cultivator called Yixian suddenly realized. So that's how it is. While he was explaining to Yixian, the battle was on the verge of breaking out. The female cultivators of Immortal Mansion's inner sect scattered to the sides to make space. They were well trained, and even though the battle had started instantly, they didn't panic in the slightest. In this case, the priority was to evacuate to an open area to avoid being affected by the impact of the spells in the battle. Of course, Fatty Luo and Dharmaraja weren't ordinary people either. The female elder's attacks were fast enough, but the stability of this trapping technique was only SOSO, in order to capture both of them at the same time. BZD. Dharmaraja chose to face it head-on. He used the godly thunder inheritance and struck the air. The runes in the sky were instantly covered by the godly thunder, and then disintegrated bit by bit. Is this the legendary Thunder Clan's holy relic? The female elder's eyes were filled with shock. Although she had heard the emergency announcement from the Immortals' mansion, saying that the invaders this time were very difficult to deal with, the female elder had never thought that there would be descendants of the Thunder Clan among the invaders. Her preemptive attack just now had not worked. Apart from a slight ripple in her eyes when she saw Dharmaraja's godly thunder inheritance, there was no other change in the female elder's eyes. You're a descendant of the Thunder Clan? The female elder stared intently at Dharmaraja. She knew that with Dharmaraja's status, the other intruders would definitely not be ordinary people. Then, she turned her gaze to Fatty Luo. Then you must be Boss Luo? It just so happens that our Manor Lord has something important to discuss with you. Fatty Luo chuckled as he stared at the female elder on the high platform. What a coincidence. I also happen to have something to discuss with your master. Your master took our Ling Jinren's spirit sword by force and took it away. This debt must be settled. Seized by force? The female elder glanced at Fatty Luo. That spirit sword clearly belonged to our master. You trespassed on Immortal Mansion, and he has already ordered that all the intruders except you will be executed on the spot. Fatty Luo was amused. I've seen a lot of robbers in pursuit of magic treasures over the years, but I've never seen anyone so shameless. After seizing someone else's sword, they say it was their own to begin with. Since that's the case, Brother Dharmaraja, let's do it. Don't stand on ceremony. Dharmaraja stretched out his hand, and lightning flashed in all directions. It was the full power of the godly thunder inheritance. When he exhaled, the sky and earth changed color, and dark clouds instantly roiled in the night sky. Boom! A thunderbolt fell from the sky and struck Dharmaraja's body, which then turned into a lightning armor. Wang Ling and grenade-throwing senior immortal watched from the crowd of immortal mansion female disciples in the distance. They felt that Dharmaraja had somehow become a lot more handsome in this state. The power of the godly thunder inheritance not only formed a lightning armor derived from the power of nature, it also stimulated Dharmaraja's muscles at the same time, making his body a lot more toned. At the same time, Fatty Luo stretched out his hand and took out a set of animal skin armor from his treasury, which he put on. Wang Ling had seen this animal skin armor before in Fatty Luo's metal shop. It was the heavenly demon pig skin armor that Fatty Luo was so proud of, also known as pig armor. Although Fatty Luo had already modified the spirit energy attribute on this pig skin armor, it still couldn't conceal the heavenly demon pig's demon king aura. As soon as the pig armor was taken out, the elder in purple on the stage already showed great interest. She was starting to understand why the Manor Lord was so interested in this boss Luo. Brother Luo, be careful. This woman won't be easy to deal with. Dharmaraja frowned. Judging from their current overall combat strength, their strength was infinitely close to the late soul formation stage, which was more than enough to deal with this group of inner sect disciples. But this female elder in purple on the high stage wasn't easy to deal with, and they would need to work together to deal with her. However, this female elder in purple wasn't that stupid. Although Dharmaraja and Fatty Luo's current strength could crush any of the inner sect disciples present, if they combined their strength, it wouldn't be easy to deal with them either. At the moment, the greatest strength that these 100 or so inner sect disciples could unleash was by working together to set up an array. With the support of such a powerful array, even an itinerant immortal would find it hard to escape. At this thought, the female elder couldn't help looking excited. Listen to my command. Set up the array. Brother Ling, not good. Grenade-throwing senior immortal cried out in alarm. Almost at the same time that the female elder shouted for them to set up the array, Wang Ling stepped forward. In that instant, it was as if time had stopped. In the next moment, a large number of female disciples collapsed under the powerful spiritual pressure that they couldn't bear. The female elder on the high stage paled in shock. What was she seeing? Chapter 292. If Loopy Toad was here, it would definitely find this scene very familiar. The only difference was that Loopy Toad had collapsed on its own back then, while Wang Ling was releasing genuine spiritual pressure this time. What kind of scene was this? In the distance, Dharmaraja and Fatty Luo felt a deep sense of terror in their hearts. Below the female elder, there were no less than 100 female disciples at the soul formation stage. When the elder gave the order to set up the array, all of them froze in place, as if they had been hit by a full set of sunflower acupuncture hands. After that, in a mere 2 seconds, the group of female disciples fell down like dominoes. Even their postures were frozen, as if they had fallen into a petrified state. Their eyes were all glazed, and they all had an expression, as if they had no idea what had just happened. What's going on? The female elder stood on a high place, her eyes narrowed into slits. Among the large number of female disciples who had collapsed due to the strong spiritual pressure, she saw 2 female disciples with slightly larger skeletons standing in the middle of the crowd. They were like 2 unmoving mountains. The moment Wang Ling's spiritual pressure descended, the female elder reacted, but she was still 1 step too late. The protective spirit light she had spread out only protected this silly disciple next to her, and the rest of the inner sect female disciples were all killed in an instant. Arc Courtyard, what's going on? The corners of the female elder's mouth twitched. The slit-eyed female cultivator rubbed her head. This is betrayal. A blatant betrayal. Shifu, as expected, you can't judge a book by its cover. It's fine if you say that beauty and discount usually like plastic surgery, but who would have thought that they would be so vicious as to help outsiders harm their own people? The female elder in purple dropped her forehead into her hand, feeling an excruciating pain in her head. Can't you see that they're 2 men? Men. The slit-eyed female cultivator was stunned by her Shifu's question, and only then did she start to carefully size up Wang Ling and grenade-throwing senior immortal. After a while, she shook her head and looked at her Shifu innocently. Their faces are so fair and clean. How can they be men? After saying this, Miss Art Courtyard sighed. Sure enough, cute people are all boys. The purple-clothed female elder's face was already twisted into a ball, and the wrinkles on her face looked like a steamed bun. She was no longer in the mood to argue with her foolish disciple. On the other end of the high platform, Dharmaraja and Fatty Luo had also recovered from their shock. What was going on? Ling Jinren and grenade-throwing senior immortal were also cross-dressing? Looks like my deduction was completely correct. Fatty Luo couldn't help laughing inwardly. Fatty Luo felt a deep sense of pride when he saw that Wang Ling had used the same strategy as him to change into this group of female disciples' Taoist robes to fool the holy array. It seems to be my first time seeing Ling Jinren like this. Dharmaraja murmured, utterly stunned in his heart. Ling Jinren's face was very fair to begin with, and now that he was wearing a veil, coupled with the corset that came with the female Taoist robe, he really did look like a cute little girl from a distance, and didn't look out of place at all. The only flaw was Ling Jinren's expression. This was Ling Jinren's trademark dead fish eyes, which could basically be seen up close. Unless Ling Jinren deliberately hid it, these eyes were really too eye-catching. I feel like I've seen something incredible. Dharmaraja stood at a distance and didn't dare approach at all. Fatty Luo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Do you think we'll be silenced? Somehow it felt very dangerous. The two of them looked at Wang Ling from a distance. Wang Ling pretended not to see them, his expression unchanging without the slightest hint of embarrassment on his face. On the high platform, the female elder could see the severity of the situation. She fixed her gaze on Wang Ling and snorted sternly. It looks like you're the backbone of the invaders this time. If you kneel down now and beg for mercy, Your Majesty, you might still have a chance to live. You guys really have guts. Are all dark forces so arrogant now? Grenade-throwing senior immortal snorted. Now that his identity had been exposed, he had nothing to fear at all. I thought Immortal Palace was only at this level. We can poke someone like you to death with one finger. The female elder pursed her lips and was instantly enraged. With a cold snort, she took a step forward, and the entire flat roof of Yuntai Pavilion instantly shook. Like an electric current, a fierce energy was transmitted from under Wang Ling's feet, ready to explode. This was a show of strength, but it was extremely powerful. If the power of an itinerant immortal exploded under Wang Ling's feet, a cultivator at the early soul formation stage would instantly have their internal organs ruptured and their primordial spirit shaken. However, Wang Ling's gaze was fixed on this ball of energy under the ground. A moment later, he merely rubbed his feet against the ground, but the energy was instantly intercepted and turned into nothingness in the blink of an eye. The flat roof was quiet again, and even the shaking stopped. Unexpectedly, it hadn't been of any use at all. What's going on? The female elder was stupefied. She had no idea how her attack had been neutralized at all. But at that moment, the slit-eyed female cultivator next to her suddenly had better vision. Shifu, I think I just saw the foot of that cute boy with dead fish eyes, who looks like a girl, rub against the ground. The purple-clothed female elder didn't have the time to ridicule the first half of the sentence. Her complexion was very unsightly. That kick of hers just now wasn't F***king similar to the times are calling. It was the power of a loose immortal's kick. Even if the other party had reacted and counterattacked, shouldn't he have stomped his foot heavily to restrain her strength? He had actually just rubbed his foot against the ground, and the energy had been neutralized. The purple-robed female elder's eyes widened in disbelief. At that moment, she felt a trace of fear in her heart. It was obvious that she hadn't fully understood the gap in strength between them. What was a true expert? Even if it was just a small counterattack, he could do it without batting an eyelid. Based on this point alone, the female elder had already admitted in her heart that she had already lost. At this thought, a few drops of cold sweat couldn't help trickling down her forehead. Shifu, you can't beat him, can you? The slit-eyed female cultivator asked. And what made her feel the most humiliating was that this stupid disciple just had to expose her at that moment. Why had she accepted such a thing back then? The corners of the female elder's mouth twitched. Since it was a fact that she couldn't beat him, There was nothing wrong with admitting it. At that moment, the female elder actually felt a little grateful to Wang Ling. It was a good thing that the wave of spiritual pressure had knocked out the 100 or so inner sect disciples. Otherwise she would have lost face in front of all of them, which would have been a real humiliation. She was a dignified itinerant immortal, and the power of her kick had been neutralized by a young man dressed in female clothes with just a brush of his toe. This was really too cruel. Thus, the female elder completely understood that this bunch of people had deliberately come to cause trouble. The way this young man in female clothes had rubbed his foot against the ground just now could be summed up in one sentence. I just rubbed, but I couldn't get in. Then here was the problem. Chapter 293. It was obvious that the current situation had already exceeded her expectations. If this youngster hadn't been here, she felt that even if Dharmaraja and Fatty Luo joined forces, they would at least have had a 50-50 chance of winning. Furthermore, as an itinerant immortal, she should have had a greater advantage. Unfortunately, Wang Ling's appearance had disrupted all her plans, and she was at a loss as to what to do. At this moment, all kinds of thoughts circled around the female elder's mind. How about it, do you want to surrender? She indeed had this thought. When she saw Wang Ling offset the power of her kick with just a brush against the ground, she thought that the outcome of this duel was already decided, and she didn't want to fight anymore. However, she didn't dare give up so easily. Even if she gave up here, the master would definitely vent his anger on her in the end. When all was said and done, she was just someone caught in the middle. No matter how she played this chess piece, she would only face an awkward situation. Whenever this happened, it was often the best choice to throw the blame on someone else. The female elder in purple stared at the eldest heir disciple next to her, and was silent for a moment. Shifu, what should we do now? The slit-eyed female cultivator asked. Yixian, go and call your martial uncle Feifei over, the female elder in purple said without hesitation. The slit-eyed female cultivator. But, how should I call him? The female elder. Didn't you make a clay jar earlier? Your martial uncle marked it on your birthday. As long as you smash it, your martial uncle will come. Grenade-throwing senior immortal was amused. You can't beat me, so you want to call for help? The corners of the female elder's mouth couldn't help twitching. You have the advantage in numbers, so you can't be considered a hero even if you win. Fine, up to you. Grenade-throwing senior immortal spread his hands. Naturally, he wasn't looking for trouble for Wang Ling. He had personally agreed to it. Although Wang Ling's kick had dispelled the power of the female elder's kick just now, his real intention had been to use the energy released by that kick to link it with her spirit energy. This way, he would be able to conduct a secret memory search without anyone noticing. But after examining the female elder's memories, Wang Ling was greatly disappointed, because she wasn't qualified at all. She had had very limited contact with the master of Immortal Mansion, and didn't know him much better than those female inner sect disciples. Now that the other party wanted to call someone over, Wang Ling couldn't be happier. The identity of the helper, who was called for under this kind of request, was definitely not simple. Under the guidance of the purple-robed female cultivator, the slit-eyed female cultivator took out the earthen jar with trembling hands. Then with a loud cry, she fiercely threw it on the ground. The moment the pot broke, whether it was Wang Ling, Grenade-throwing senior immortal, or Dharmaraja and Fatty Luo, who were standing nearby, all of them could clearly sense the vigorous spirit energy that surged out of the broken pot. What powerful spirit power! Grenade-throwing senior immortal frowned. Psionic power was the standard unit used to measure the strength of spiritual power. There was a meter on the market that could be used to measure psionic power, and the psionic power that was released at this moment was estimated to have reached the saturation level of a common meter. In the truest sense of the word, it was 100% psionic power. Who is it? A few seconds after the pot broke, there was an explosive roar in the air, as if it had come from the distant horizon, echoing endlessly. Then, a huge black shadow descended from the sky, causing an intense tremor and roar. After his initial contact with Immortal Mansion, Wang Ling already knew that there were no male disciples in Immortal Mansion. But while there were no male disciples, the appearance of this giant beast in front of them was still a little unexpected. This was a huge silver horse that was only 20 zhang tall. Dressed in battle armor, it stared at Wang Ling and the others with a fierce gaze. What the hell is this thing? A huge shadow loomed over them, and Dharmaraja and the others instantly broke out in sweat. This oppressive force was too strong. I feel that this horse has something to do with the holy array. Fatty Luo frowned deeply, but very quickly, they felt the pressure on them disappear as Wang Ling spread the golden light shield over everyone present. This silver warhorse stared at the golden light shield in silence for a long while. Then, its huge body gradually shrank to a normal size, but the pressure it gave off didn't lessen at all. Brother Ling, could this be? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had already sensed this warhorse's origin. There was absolutely no way he could be wrong. Wang Ling stared at the silver warhorse in front of him and narrowed his eyes. This was a genuine holy beast, and its body was also mixed with the ability bestowed by the core array pattern, which was why it had such powerful strength that was saturated with spiritual energy. When they had been sucked into the game space back then, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal clearly remembered that Wang Ling had severed the array pattern with one slash of his sword, causing the entire space to instantly collapse. Now the power of the core array pattern was attached to this holy beast. If it was seriously injured, it wouldn't directly cause the ice crystal array to collapse, but the structure of the space would definitely be greatly affected. At that time, he wouldn't have to continue wearing women's clothes. Of course, this wasn't the main point. The main point was that there was actually a holy beast hidden inside this immortal talisman. Wasn't this a species that had gone extinct long ago? Whether it was inside or outside the country, it was already a huge discovery for a first-class spirit beast to appear. Not so long ago, countless spirit beasts had been on the verge of extinction because of cultivators' frantic campaigns and hunting. In ancient times, a lot of spirit beasts and even holy beasts had been killed to make bone soup and meatballs. In ancient records, there was a pitiful holy beast, a 9-headed lion, who had been beheaded by a brat and made into braised lion's head. Although they didn't know the origin of this silver warhorse for the time being, given its aura, it was definitely a holy beast. Was it you who injured our people from Immortal Mansion? Since you're here, you can all stay. The silver warhorse roared and raised its front hooves. In an instant, the space around them changed, and the scene in front of them actually shifted to a desert. Everyone was sucked in, and Dharmaraja and Fatty Luo were deeply shocked. It's actually an intrinsic spirit field. Fatty Luo narrowed his eyes. What's that? Dharmaraja was stunned. It's also a form of a small world, also known as an internal small world. After it's formed in the body, it can be used in an instant, and is mostly used in battle. The person who releases the spirit field stores a huge amount of spirit energy, which can only be used by the person who releases the spirit field. In other words, once our spirit energy is used up, we won't be able to replenish it in the intrinsic spirit field. Fatty Luo narrowed his eyes. As expected of a holy beast. Then what do we do now? We can only rely on Lingzhenren. We're not strong enough to face an enemy who can release an intrinsic spirit field. Fatty Luo sighed and patted Dharmaraja on the shoulder. Hurry up and do more commentary like me. Most commentators won't die. Dharmaraja. Chapter 294. The power of the intrinsic spirit field was self-evident. Just being in it made people feel uncomfortable. Of course, there were two exceptions, the violet-clothed female elder and the narrow-eyed female cultivator called Yixian. Their bodies were covered with a layer of magic incantations, but this layer of magic incantations was like a secret key. It could eliminate the sense of oppression brought by the intrinsic spirit field, as well as the feeling of spiritual power being cut off, and maintain the smooth flow of spiritual power to the outside world. How is it, true monarch? Can you tell what this sacred beast is? While Wang Ling and the silver warhorse were facing off, Dharmaraja and Fatty Luo hurriedly found an opportunity to join them. I can't tell for the time being. Grenade-throwing senior immortal couldn't help shivering. These two people dressed as women were really too scary. Holy beasts all have their own names. If I can find out the name of this silver warhorse, I might be able to find out its weakness from the ancient texts. Fatty Luo stared at the silver warhorse with a deep frown. For some reason, he felt that this silver warhorse reminded him of a certain totem he had seen in the past. The totem was a silver-furred warhorse. It wore shoulder armor, had a single horn on its head and two wide steel wings. After staring at the warhorse for a long time, Fatty Luo shook his head. This holy beast should be a unicorn, but I don't know its specific name yet. Grenade-throwing senior immortal. I heard the disciple next to the female Taoist in purple call this holy beast martial Uncle Feifei. Shocked, Dharmaraja blurted out. So it's called Ma Feifei? Grenade-throwing senior immortal and Fatty Luo. At that moment, in the intrinsic spirit field, Wang Ling and the silver warhorse looked at each other deeply. The silver warhorse was shocked. Under normal circumstances, after entering the intrinsic spirit field, apart from the person who released the field, and the person who gave the spirit field the key, everyone else's spiritual energy would be greatly suppressed. Once their spiritual energy was depleted, there would be no way to replenish it. Therefore, when many cultivators were sucked into an intrinsic spirit field, they would adopt the tactic of being tortured. Their first priority was to preserve their spiritual energy and break out of the spirit field. However, what shocked the silver warhorse was that it could sense that the young man in front of it was brimming with spiritual energy. It was as if he was not affected at all. Wang Ling had already changed out of his female Taoist robes and was only wearing a red and black sports jacket and a pair of track pants. This was what shocked the silver warhorse the most. Without any Taoist robes or magic treasures to protect him, he was able to resist the intrinsic spirit field with just his physical body. How powerful was his source of spirit energy? Furthermore, under the continuous effect of the golden protective light of the sanctification body, the consumption of spiritual power should have been greatly increased. However, not only did this youth not feel anything, he even split the golden light to protect the other three. Was he really human? The silver horse found it hard to imagine how a cultivator in the level of a perfected cultivator could have such inexhaustible spiritual energy. No one can do as they please in my spirit realm. The silver horse narrowed its eyes. Suddenly, the steel wings on its body spread out. They were more than 200 feet wide. The tips of the wings faced the sky like two steel blades. The muscles on its forelimbs bulged, and the ground shook violently as its iron hooves stomped on the ground. Less than 10 meters after it took off, it soared into the sky. The steel wings on its back flapped left and right, and both wings cut through the air as it charged at Wang Ling in a cross shape. Wang Ling stretched out his right hand, and spirit energy instantly formed a vortex in his palm. Then he pushed his hand forward lightly. This was just a test attack to gauge the strength of this wing attack. This highly concentrated spirit energy was a turbine-shaped spirit wall that released powerful spirit power, but was easily smashed by the silver horse's wing attack halfway. Wang Ling narrowed his eyes at this scene. As he had expected, this silver horse's wing attack had the effect of breaking through defense. To some extent, it could ignore the defense of the golden protective light and inflict damage. The corners of Grenade-throwing senior immortal and the others' mouths twitched at this scene. In the middle of such a tense fight, this youth actually had the leisure to release a probing defense to test the other party's attack. Too abnormal. Fatty Luo was horrified from the bottom of his heart. Looking at it from another angle, Brother Ling is very confident in his ability to cast spells instantaneously. Grenade-throwing senior immortal also sighed. If someone could improve their ability to cast spells instantaneously to the extreme, they would indeed be able to do what Wang Ling did, and wouldn't have to worry about making the first move. Even if they launched an attack later on, whether it was for attack or defense, they would be able to release multiple spells in an instant. In the air, the silver horse cast a complicated look at Wang Ling. This scene also left him flabbergasted, but before he could stop marveling at it, something even more frightening happened. Wang Ling's hand turned into a knife, and a tremendous amount of spirit energy swirled around his palm. In the end, It directly transformed into a spirit knife that was dozens of meters long. It also drew a cross in the air and pushed at the wing attack in midair. If this was an attack that could break through defense, then the countermeasure was very obvious. It was fine as long as the attack didn't get close. In that instant, sweat broke out on the silver horse's forehead. Even at such a distance, it could already feel the sting of this wind pressure. In the face of absolute power, it realized that everything else was superfluous. The two crosses collided in the air, and in the end, they were directly destroyed. At that moment, the silver warhorse finally realized how serious the situation was. As a holy beast, its ability to sense danger was far superior to that of a normal cultivator. Although it couldn't accurately calculate how strong the youngster in front of it was, it immediately made the right choice. Flapping its steel wings in front of it, it recklessly charged at Wang Ling from the horizon, like a massive meteor falling from the sky, ready to perish together with Wang Ling. The silver horse thought that as long as its attack hit its target, it would definitely be a suicidal attack. It could be said that it would hurt the enemy 1,000 times, and hurt itself 800 times. But the silver horse didn't care in the slightest. As it charged down from the sky, it had taken advantage of the right time and the right place. Whether it was in terms of timing or position, it had done just fine. The truth was that it had planned very well. With the intrinsic spirit field and the core array pattern supporting each other, there was no way it would die. Holy beasts were called holy beasts not only because they had a long lifespan that surpassed that of first-class spirit beasts, but also because of the holy beast heart they carried. As long as the beast heart was preserved, it would have a terrifying ability to recover. Thus, in theory, Wang Ling would definitely be the one to be injured, or even killed in the end. Even if he was seriously injured, the core array pattern and the holy beast heart would protect him, so he wouldn't die at the very least. Chapter 295. Wang Ling looked up at the sky, his black and red jacket flapping wildly in the wind. The collar of the jacket was open, and the young man's distinct collarbones and defined lines could be clearly seen. For the silver horse, the body looked thinner and thinner than any body it had ever seen before. However, the spiritual energy contained in the body shocked even the horse. He was just a mere human cultivator, but with the support of its intrinsic spirit field and the core array pattern, and his spirit power was saturated, he still couldn't contend with it. The silver horse already had no words to describe this strange feeling. For the first time, it didn't feel like it was facing a human cultivator, but that it was challenging the entire world on its own. The chosen one. Did this kind of person really exist? The moment it turned into a fireball and a meteor, the silver warhorse pondered deeply in its heart. At that moment, the intrinsic spirit field shook, and the silver warhorse fell from the sky in Wang Ling's direction. The moment it landed, the silver warhorse actually had no idea what the outcome would be, because after the previous two confrontations, it had learned time and again that this young man in front of it couldn't be judged by common sense. To be, or not to be, to do it, or not to do it, to crash or not to crash. The second before it hit the ground, the silver warhorse felt that this philosophical theory was like Schrödinger's cat. You could only know if you did it. Wang Ling gazed at the fireball in the sky as it grew larger and larger, and took a deep breath. Even he had to admit that this attack was very fierce. If he was hit by it without any protection, the consequences would definitely be very serious. Under such a fierce attack, the usual choice would be to go all out to defend, but doing so now would put him in even more danger. Furthermore, the silver horse's theory of dealing 1,000 damage to the enemy and 800 damage to oneself had been based on Wang Ling's theory of going all out to defend. Since ancient times, those who had attained sage body had always been conceited and liked to rely on their golden bodies to charge around. However, the silver horse had overlooked Wang Ling's own choice. For Wang Ling, even if he had the power of a sage body, the best defense was actually offense. Thus, as the silver warhorse fell like a meteor, Wang Ling gathered strength in his right fist. He punched. A loud boom came from the intrinsic spirit field. It was as if Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and the others had seen an invisible steel cannon with a warhead radius of 30 zhang shoot out directly with Wang Ling at its center, and the powerful recoil directly caused the ground behind him to collapse. The wind pressure from the punch had only just neared the silver warhorse when it began to vomit blood in midair. If it wasn't for the fact that the armor on its body absorbed a certain amount of damage from the wind pressure, it would have already died. But as a holy beast, even so, it still maintained its stubbornness as it did its best to dive toward Wang Ling one last time. But to Wang Ling, all of this was meaningless. Behind the silver warhorse, the female elder in purple and the slit-eyed female cultivator watched helplessly as the silver warhorse, which had turned into a fiery meteor, was intercepted by the power of Wang Ling's fist in the sky, and then crashed miserably to one side. He plunged headfirst into the ground. At that moment, he couldn't help wanting to recite a poem. Then, I died, and even my feathers rotted in the ground. Why are there tears in my eyes? Because of the depth of my love for this land. Shifu, did Martial Uncle Fei lose? The slit-eyed female cultivator asked as she sucked on her fingers. The female elder in purple's face twitched, but before she could knock her stupid disciple on the head, the young man's cannon-like punch had already smashed into the spirit wall of the intrinsic spirit field, and countless cracks instantly spread out like a spider web. Not good. The female elder turned pale with fright, but it was already too late. The silver warhorse was seriously injured, and the spirit field keys she had given to master and disciple had already lost their effect. Thus, the moment the spirit wall broke, the two of them were sucked out at the same time, thrown up by the impact of the spirit field, and then smashed into the ground on the flat roof of Yuntai Pavilion. On the other side, with the intrinsic spirit field destroyed, Wang Ling and the others had escaped unscathed. The protective golden light had perfectly blocked the impact of the shattering of the intrinsic spirit field, and they landed steadily on the ground. The silver warhorse spat out blood and collapsed on one side of the platform, its neck crooked. Wang Ling stared at it and sighed in his heart. There was stubbornness in its eyes, and it was full of unyielding anger as it tried to get up again. Wang Ling raised his foot and was wondering if he should stomp on it one last time, when Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal suddenly shouted at him. Brother Ling, show mercy. Although we can't see holy beasts anymore, if they still exist, they're state-protected animals. Oh, so it was a state-protected animal. Wang Ling thought for a bit, and finally withdrew his foot, as the warhorse's forehead was beaded with sweat. If he had stomped on it just now, the silver warhorse could already imagine the outcome. Although its holy beast heart had been injured, and was already bleeding, it hadn't been completely destroyed. With such a serious injury, as long as it was given 5 days, no 3 days, it would be able to recover completely. If it had been a normal spirit beast, even a first-class spirit beast, with such a serious injury, without any means of treatment, the only thing it could do was wait for death. Powerful vitality. This was the reason why sacred beasts were called sacred beasts. It was also one of the main reasons why holy beasts had gone extinct. In those years, cultivators who pursued heavenly Tao and sought eternal life had fought many times for the hearts of holy beasts, and had even started a world war over a single heart. But modern cultivation science had already shown that the reason why the hearts of holy beasts were so powerful was because their blood was different from the rest. To put it simply, the reason why a holy beast's heart could be used was because it was inside a holy beast's body. Once the heart was taken out, it would just be a nourishment to soothe bowels and relieve bowel movements. At that moment, the panting silver warhorse lying on the ground with its head tilted to one side had already lost all of its previous arrogance. It had always hated human cultivators, and had chosen to cooperate with Immortal Mansion purely for revenge. Thus, it didn't even care about the master of Immortal Mansion. But after exchanging blows with Wang Ling just now, the silver warhorse had already sensed that this human cultivator in front of it wasn't the same kind of trash as anyone it had ever seen before. Thus, when Wang Ling had approached it, it had felt a deep sense of fear. This was also the first time it had felt fear. Everything had returned to the same old question. Who on earth are you? The silver warhorse asked weakly as it lay on the ground, its tone filled with fear. Wang Ling felt that every time he fought and lost, this was a question that everyone would ask. But today Wang Ling was prepared. With a wave of his hand, a spirit light flashed, and he took out a brown booklet. The silver warhorse laughed weakly. You want to take advantage of my weakness to use the codex to subdue me? Later, it realized that it had been thinking too much. Wang Ling put the brown booklet in front of it. It was surprised to find that it was actually a student ID card. Chapter 296. Lying on the ground, the silver warhorse stared blankly at the student ID in front of it, and already didn't know what expression it should show to Wang Ling. From the student ID alone, it could already confirm two things. The first thing was that this student ID was made of real leather. The second thing was that this human cultivator in front of it was a genuine high school student. There was even a steel seal on the student ID, and there was magic power left on the steel seal. There was no way it could be wrong about this. A high school student. The silver horse's hair stood on end. Were all high school students nowadays this strong? Just how good were their meals? Wang Ling stared at the silver horse. Just as he reached out to touch its body, it involuntarily twitched and tried to stand up, but found that it was very difficult for it to do so in its current state. What do you want to do? There was fear in the silver horse's eyes, but Wang Ling didn't cause it any additional damage. He just felt for the core array pattern covering its body, and then used magic power to pull it out and directly rip it apart. The silver horse turned pale with fright once again. It was the first time it had seen something like this. This was a F*** king core array pattern. It could be considered a rather illusory object, and it contained a huge amount of spirit power. Pulling out the core array pattern with one's bare hands was like plugging a wet finger into an electrical outlet. Not only was this human scary, he was also very violent. This was the silver horse's second impression of Wang Ling. What should we do with these people? Looking around, Dharmaraja realized that there were still a lot of things to take care of here. The female disciples who had been knocked unconscious by the spiritual pressure, as well as the master and disciple who had just been thrown out of the intrinsic spirit field. The moment the female elder had been thrown out, she had actually been thinking about protecting her silly disciple, and had suffered even more serious injuries. Blood was dripping from the corners of her mouth and nose, and it was likely that her primordial spirit had suffered some damage. Dharmaraja, Fatty Luo, and the others blushed with shame. An itinerant immortal had been affected to this extent after being thrown out of the intrinsic spirit field. If it hadn't been for Ling Jinren's protective golden light, they would have all been seriously injured. Tie them up first, said Fatty Luo. I brought a lot of rope. No, I think it's better if you take off your women's clothes first. Grenade-throwing senior immortal stared at the two of them, the corners of his mouth twitching. When he had seen Wang Ling tear off the core array pattern, he had already been impatient to make this request. These two people in women's clothes were really too eye-catching. Sigh, it's such a rare experience. When Dharmaraja took off his female clothes, he was still a little reluctant. Grenade-throwing senior immortal. The incident at the top of the Yuntai Pavilion had temporarily come to an end, but it was not truly over. The core pattern on the silver warhorse was only a part of the ice crystal array. After cutting it off, it could not completely stop the operation of the ice crystal array. However, it could prevent the guardian spirit from regathering and its endless attacks. You have already won. With such strength, there's no need to fear the master of Immortal Mansion. The silver warhorse lay weakly on the ground, panting. It struggled to raise its eyes, and only when Wang Ling was very close to it did he realize that it actually had eyelashes. Earlier, he had also heard that slit-eyed female cultivator call it Senior Uncle Feifei, so this was probably a mare? I found traces in the palace of the master of Immortal Mansion's familiar magic array, and he had the support of the familiar. How could he have lost so easily? Grenade-throwing senior immortal asked. This person is naturally suspicious. He used the familiar to set up the restoration magic array, And after building this huge complex for Immortal Mansion, he used a spell to control the familiar to make it self-destruct. I saw it with my own eyes. There's no way I'm wrong. The Silver Warhorse explained slowly without the slightest hesitation. What kind of operation is this? Hearing this, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was stupefied. Then, he suddenly thought of something and asked the Silver Horse, "Since you're a holy beast of Immortal Mansion, why would you tell us such a secret?" The Silver Horse was speechless, and it looked weakly at Wang Ling. "Even if I didn't say it, you would have been able to detect it, right?" That's true." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded. The Silver Horse sighed. "I'm very weak right now, and I can't even stand up." A spell like memory retrieval was like taking X-rays with modern technology. It was actually quite taxing on the brain. If you do it a few more times, with my IQ, I'm afraid I'll have to say goodbye to riding a bicycle. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Speaking up to this point, the Silver Horse's eyes hesitated slightly before it said, "Also, I'm not a member of Immortal Mansion." "What do you mean?" "My Silver Unicorn clan used to be a glorious clan of holy beasts. But in those years, too many of our clan members died, because humans fought over the beast hearts of holy beasts. I'm the only one who survived that storm." The Silver Horse couldn't help sneering. "I hate the human race to the core. Why would I want to join them? Everything I did was just for revenge." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal already understood a little. This reason could be said to be truly simple and crude. To put it nicely, it was cooperation. But in fact, the Silver Horse was borrowing Immortal Mansion's hand to take revenge on society. Of course, this Silver Unicorn hated humans to the bone. But there was one exception, and that was the slit-eyed female cultivator, who had fainted next to the female elder in purple. The Silver Unicorn looked in the direction of the slit-eyed female cultivator, then suddenly turned to Wang Ling with a pleading look in its eyes. "Please don't hurt her. I brought this girl into Immortal Mansion. This was a deal I made with the master of Immortal Mansion." "A deal?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal rubbed his chin. The Silver Horse said, "This girl helped me a lot, but she was also affected. She wasn't stupid before, but unfortunately her brain was damaged by the poison. The master of Immortal Mansion happens to have this kind of resource to suppress the poison in her body." "What kind of poison is it?" "It's a little complicated, and I can't explain it in a short time. I used the holy beast's blood as a catalyst, and combined it with the earth root to make her consume it once every 3 days. Only then could I guarantee that the poison wouldn't take effect." At this point, the Silver Horse accidentally spat out another mouthful of blood. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked at the ground with a little pity. This was practically a pool of gold. Furthermore, when he heard the Silver Unicorn mention the root of the earth, he was even more alarmed, since it was a rare medicinal herb on the verge of extinction. "Brother Ling, is there a way to get rid of this poison?" After thinking for a while, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal suddenly looked at Wang Ling. "You know how to detoxify it?" On the ground, the Silver Unicorn had an incredulous expression on its face. Then it saw Wang Ling walk in the girl's direction, a pure white light rising from his right hand. Wang Ling stretched out his hand and pressed it against the girl's forehead. Activating the Great Purification spell, wisps of black mist were expelled from the girl's ears. The whole process took less than a minute. The corners of the Silver Unicorn's mouth twitched. "It's gone?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded seriously. It's gone." The Silver Unicorn sucked in a cold breath and stared at Wang Ling with awe in its eyes. It was clearly still very weak, but Wang Ling's handsomeness just now had impressed it, and it yelled excitedly, "Master! You're my master!" Chapter 297. It was definitely not an easy task to win the favor of a sacred beast. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had to admit that Wang Ling did indeed have a special charm. But when all was said and done, he was now facing a Silver Unicorn, a species that was almost impossible to encounter in today's world. If this was exposed, it might start a war. The young man in white stared at the Silver Unicorn in front of him and sighed. "If you want to join us, you still need to take a test." Test. The silver unicorn thought for a bit, then quickly nodded. As long as you don't hand me over to the state, everything is fine. Grenade-throwing senior immortal. Nowadays, even holy beasts were so straightforward. But there were many times when the young man in white felt that this really depended on fate and destiny. It was very clear that fate and destiny had arrived, and it was just a choice. The young man didn't dare make the decision himself. The person this holy beast admired was Wang Ling, so the final decision was still in Wang Ling's hands. Brother Ling, what do you think? The young man in white asked. Wang Ling began to examine the silver unicorn. In fact, in the long river of history, there had been a lot of holy beasts who would automatically choose a reliable master to sign a contract with, in order to avoid conflicts between human cultivators. But most of the time, it had been an agreement. Holy beasts had always been very arrogant since ancient times, and it had always been the holy beasts themselves who made their own choices. The human cultivators who were chosen had almost no right to refuse. But now, the situation was exactly the opposite. In the face of absolute strength, the silver unicorn realized that it was like a sagging-chested obeson, completely unattractive. The most important thing was that if it really handed itself over, it would become a silk banner. At that moment, the silver unicorn had already made up its mind that it absolutely wouldn't let this happen. I'm actually very easy to take care of. Even if I don't eat, it's fine. The silver unicorn stared at Wang Ling, its eyes shining with sincerity. When I'm more or less healed, I'll be able to take human form. When that time comes, I can even do the laundry and cook. Wang Ling stared at the silver unicorn for a while before withdrawing his gaze. He didn't agree on the spot, but he didn't refuse either. The silver unicorn had also discovered that the master it had chosen was a taciturn person who didn't like to talk. It could only turn its gaze to the white-robed youth and ask, "Master, what did he say?" Ling Jinren didn't refuse, but he also didn't agree. In this situation, he probably wants to stay and observe first. In other words, I still have a chance. The silver unicorn's eyes lit up. Grenade-throwing senior immortal sked, and wrote 3 English letters on the silver unicorn's blood on the ground. GCM. He then rubbed its head. The silver unicorn asked, "What does this mean?" The white-robed youth pointed at the sky in a profound manner. "This is the secret of the heavens. You have to comprehend it yourself." The silver unicorn stared at the 3 English letters and fell into deep thought. About 5 or 6 minutes later, alarmed by the earlier commotion, Immortal Toya and Silian Jinren approached the top of Yuntai Pavilion. "Brother Two," the white-robed youth beckoned from afar. From a distance, Immortal Toya saw the bleeding silver unicorn at the young man in white's feet, and was instantly alarmed. "I sensed the aura of a holy beast earlier. It turned out that it hadn't been an illusion." After that, this handsome man with the medicine gourd on his back stole a glance at Wang Ling, his heart filled with astonishment. That commotion just now had been so sensational. It wasn't hard to guess who had caused it. "Take a look, how are your injuries?" The white-robed youth looked at Immortal Toya. "If it's external injuries, I have top-notch medicine here that can heal them right away. As for internal injuries, I know that holy beasts have beast hearts and can recover on their own. But it's better to take some medicine to speed up your recovery." Immortal Toya put down the gourd on his back, and with a flash of spirit light, he took out a pill the size of a wash basin. Wang Ling was startled when he saw it. "What's this?" The corners of Grenade-throwing senior immortal's mouth couldn't help twitching as he thought of the pile of booger that Nez's mother had accumulated during her 3 years of pregnancy. "This is a super Dahuan pill I made from 100 Dahuan pills." Immortal Toya was very proud of his pills, and he waved them in front of the silver unicorn. "This is for you. Once you've recovered, just give me some blood." At that moment, the silver unicorn felt like it had boarded a pirate ship. "I was wondering why everyone was gone. It turns out they're all here." On the other side, Silian Jinren looked from afar and saw that many inner-sect female disciples were being tied up by Fatty Luo and Dharmaraja and thrown into a magic circle. This magic circle had been drawn by Fatty Luo, using the power of Dharmaraja's godly thunder inheritance, and was extremely restrictive to prevent these female disciples from escaping. After the 100 or so female disciples were tied up and placed in the circle like hairy crabs, Fatty Luo let out a sigh of relief after putting in the last female elder in purple. It's finally done. But what are you going to do with this group of female disciples? Salian Jinren asked. Judging from the fight just now, this group of inner-sect female disciples doesn't seem to know what Immortal Mansion is doing in the outside world. They were sent here at a very young age to be isolated from the rest of the world and raised alone. I'm afraid they're completely unaware of the situation in the outside world, and don't know that Immortal Mansion is actually a dark force. Salian Jinren sighed. If that was the case, the situation was very complicated. Putting aside the question of who these female disciples belonged to, signing contracts to sell themselves through illegal human trafficking was a violation of the law to begin with. Fatty Luo suggested. In any case, all of Immortal Mansion's inner-sect female disciples are here now. We'll have to trouble Salian Jinren to take care of them later. It's better to ask a lawyer. Of course. Salian Jinren nodded. Suddenly, Fatty Luo looked around and abruptly raised his head. Then the only ones left are the master of Immortal Mansion and the elders who are hiding behind him, right? Given the scale of the earlier battle, it was impossible for the master of Immortal Mansion and the other elders to not have made a move. Most importantly, Ling Jinren had already torn away more than half of the core array pattern of the ice crystal array. If the holy array was even the slightest bit affected, it would shatter. At that time, all of Immortal Mansion's palaces would be exposed to the real world. Thus, it was impossible for the master of Immortal Mansion to not have made a move. I'm very familiar. The female elder continued to spout nonsense. My adoptive parents gave me this name not long after I was born. I've never interacted with you before, so how could you recognize me? Did you think I didn't see the signal you sent out earlier? While the female elders were horrified, Feng Xing chuckled. A mere master of Immortal Mansion isn't enough for me to eat. Although you haven't seen me before, you've definitely seen my dad. Under the three female elders' terrified expressions, Feng Xing narrowed his eyes, and his originally sunny face gradually darkened as he gradually lost his smile. Over the last 100 years, Immortal Mansion has done a lot of things with the ice crystal array that my dad gave you, right? You are. The three female elders' eyes widened at the same time, but before they could say anything, they felt an immense pressure weighing down on them. The youngster had just pointed his finger, and they were actually buried in the ground, with only their heads sticking out. Under this immense pressure, it was hard for them to even open their eyelids and lips. Feng Xing stepped forward, his hand turning into a spirit blade as he pointed it at the three female cultivators' heads. But I know that you aren't the culprits, so I'll give you a quick death for now. As soon as he said this, in the next moment, a heavy voice rang out in the sky. Junior, do you dare touch these three people? The three female elders couldn't speak under the immense pressure, but they couldn't help cheering in their hearts. They knew that the master of Immortal Mansion was here. This voice was mixed with pure fluctuations of magic energy, and actually directly penetrated the intrinsic spirit field. Although it didn't affect it, Feng Xing was still a little surprised. Oh, Feng Xing smiled and stared at the sky. You're finally willing to show yourself? However, the movements of his hands did not stop because of this sound. With a crack, he raised the blade and cut off a head. Chapter 299. Even the master of Immortal Mansion hadn't expected this at all. Before he could send a second telepathic message, he had already sensed that the aura of one of the female elders had completely disappeared. He had truly beheaded her in one stroke, leaving no room for negotiation at all. What was even more shocking was that this wasn't the end. Feng Xing had dealt with this very decisively. Spirit energy condensed in his palm, as he raised it again, and beheaded the second female elder. And then the third. The heavy pressure of the intrinsic spirit field dissipated, and the eyes of the three female elders' heads that had rolled to the ground popped open one after the other. They had died with everlasting regret, and not a single drop of blood flowed from their necks. It could only be said that not only had Feng Xing been decisive, but he had also been ferocious. The most important thing was that these three heads had belonged to itinerant immortals. Feng Xing had chopped off their heads 3 times in a row without giving them any time to breathe, as if he were chopping vegetables. This scene, no matter who saw it, would be extremely horrified. Good. You've got guts. You're courting death. Then came the master of Immortal Mansion's rage. His furious roar penetrated the intrinsic spirit field, and a moment later, the roof of Glittering Jewels Pavilion's heavenly palace outside the intrinsic spirit field was directly lifted off. With a wave of Feng Xing's hand, the intrinsic spirit field retreated, and the heads of the 3 female elders appeared. Just like that, their bodies would forever be buried in this intrinsic spirit field. The roof of Glittering Jewels Pavilion was lifted, and the Taoist in red and the Eastern Branch Chief from before appeared at the same time. Feng Xing shook the heads in front of them, then casually tossed them behind him. The Taoist in red and the Eastern Branch Chief next to him stung at this scene, and they gritted their teeth, their anger already boiling. In fact, the master of Immortal Mansion had been secretly observing for a long time, while Feng Xing had been fighting the 3 female elders. After witnessing Feng Xing's intrinsic spirit field, the master of Immortal Mansion had long since come to a conclusion about how powerful this person was. This person definitely wasn't an ordinary person, and his aura was indeed familiar. It was very likely that he was a descendant of one of the opponents he had fought before. Furthermore, he had basically already deduced this. This intrinsic spirit field isn't yours, is it? It's not a good thing to rely on an inherited intrinsic spirit field to be spoiled and arrogant. The Taoist in red stood on a cloud and looked down at Feng Xing. This question wasn't false, and Feng Xing couldn't find a reason to refute it, since this intrinsic spirit field really wasn't his. For Feng Xing, this could be considered a relic. He had already accumulated a powerful source of spirit energy inside, and the space key had been engraved into his body when he was born. When he was 5 years old, he accidentally activated it. After a long time, he learned that it was called an intrinsic spirit field. Thinking about it carefully, Feng Xing felt that his childhood had been pretty miserable. He had been like a protagonist in a novel who had picked up a cheat and had to rely on himself to figure out everything. Even though Mr. and Mrs. Feng had given him a lot of love and care, he still couldn't accept those people who pushed his biological father step by step into the abyss for their own benefit. Historically, his father had been an absolute tragedy and a heinous person, but whether this was true or not, Feng Xing had his own conclusion. In the air, the master of Immortal Mansion continued to sneer when he saw the youngster sink into silence. Given your strength, if my 3 subordinates hadn't been careless and been sucked into your intrinsic spirit field to be suppressed, you would never have been a match for any one of them. What's the point of saying this now? Feng Xing sighed in his heart, but his face showed that familiar harmless smile again. I didn't expect you to be able to use the intrinsic spirit field to such an extent with your cultivation. However, since you've already revealed your final trump card, then the game is already over, right? The red-clothed Taoist laughed sinisterly. It was a big taboo to reveal one's trump card first in a fight. In Wang Ling's opinion, Feng Xing being able to summon an intrinsic spirit field at this realm was already his limit. These 3 female elders were all core members of Immortal Mansion, but Master of Immortal Mansion, Cheng Yu felt that their deaths weren't unjust. At the very least, he had forced this youngster to reveal his life-saving trump card, and had also consumed a lot of Feng Xing's spirit energy. Otherwise, it really would have been difficult to deal with them. Now, Cheng Yu felt that he hadn't completely lost yet. As long as he killed Feng Xing and used his secret key to enter the intrinsic spirit field to find the primordial spirits of the 3 female elders, Immortal Mansion wouldn't have truly lost this battle. The biggest advantage of itinerant immortals was that after their physical bodies were destroyed, their primordial spirits could survive for more than a month, and they wouldn't be affected by light. Although he had sensed Fang Xing chopping off the heads of the 3 female elders one by one, it was clear that he hadn't had enough time to destroy their primordial spirits. This was why Cheng Yu had hurriedly appeared here. If he hadn't, none of the 3 female elders' primordial spirits would have survived. Thinking this, Cheng Yu inexplicably felt that the outcome was a foregone conclusion. For him, Fang Xing's appearance could be considered an accident, but it could also be considered a pleasant surprise. Back then, Cheng Yu had excavated almost all of the wealth that immortal Shi Pai had left behind, as well as some treasures that he had kept hidden, such as a godly object like the intrinsic spirit field. All these years, Cheng Yu had been searching for them, and he hadn't expected that someone would actually deliver them to his doorstep. These were the treasures that he hadn't been able to excavate from immortal Shi Pai back then, and now, he naturally wanted to fight for them from the other party's son. For cultivators, strength was the most important thing, so those things should have belonged to him in the first place. As he was thinking, 2 dazzling balls of light interrupted his train of thought. Master of Immortal Mansion, Cheng Yu was extremely astonished. He couldn't believe that this youngster still had so much spirit energy left after his battle with the 3 female elders. He dodged to the side, and the 2 dazzling balls of light nailed themselves to the huge stone pillars supporting the palace, which immediately collapsed with a thud. Cheng Yu hadn't seen these 2 balls of light clearly, but he was 100% sure that they weren't spells or magic treasures. However, they had been too fast, and he hadn't been able to catch them at all. Too arrogant. The Eastern Branch chief gnashed his teeth and glared at Fang Xing. Master, you have to teach this person a lesson. Fang Xing smiled at him. May I ask, who do you think you are? Then he waved his hand, and the 2 balls of light that had shot out earlier instantly shot back behind him. This time, they pierced through the Eastern Branch chief's body at an extremely fast speed. Master of Immortal Mansion, Cheng Yu finally saw them clearly. These 2 balls of light were actually 2 scales, but the price for seeing them clearly was Chapter 300. All of this happened in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint. These 2 snake scales were so fast that they moved as fast as top-notch spirit swords. It took the Master of Immortal Mansion, Cheng Yu, 2 rounds before he could see the true faces of these 2 balls of light. The Eastern Branch chief died with his eyes wide open. 2 bloody fist-sized holes appeared in his chest, and he fell directly from the smoke in the air. Cheng Yu stared at the youngster in front of him in utter astonishment. He couldn't believe that the other party would dare to attack so arrogantly and cut down one of his subordinates in front of him without giving him the slightest bit of face. Cheng Yu had his own theory about the origin of these 2 scales. When immortal Shi Pai had shocked the world back then, there had been a rumor that his entire body, including the snake scales he had cultivated, were living magic treasures. He had been called a monster, and had also been nicknamed Living Magic Treasures. This was also the main reason why immortal Shi Pai had been dismembered in the end. In the eyes of most people, he was a monster that couldn't be left alive. But Cheng Yu hadn't expected that Fang Xing would actually obtain 2 more snake scales. But in his eyes, they probably weren't trump cards anymore. Although they were as powerful as a first-class holy weapon, they weren't as threatening as an intrinsic spirit field. Of course, Cheng Yu had his own trump cards, but he didn't want to use them in vain until he was in a critical situation. Given the current situation, he wanted to have some fun with Fang Xing and try his best to see if the other party had any other magic treasures. You're very good, I admire you. Cheng Yu looked down at Fang Xing. I'm interested in taking you in as my subordinate. If you're willing to surrender in battle, you can let me know at any time. As soon as he said that, Cheng Yu abruptly opened his eyes. Fang Xing felt the scene in front of him suddenly change, and he had actually landed on a glacier. He was astonished to find that there were actually countless spirit swords sealed in the ice on all sides, as well as in the layer of ice beneath his feet. You're not the only one with an intrinsic spirit field. Cheng Yu stared at him gloomily as he hovered in the air. He had already calculated what was going to happen next. After activating an intrinsic spirit field once, there was a fairly long cooldown period. and it couldn't be used again in a short period of time. Thus, he seized this opportunity to directly get rid of Feng Xing in his intrinsic spirit field. The next moment, he waved his hand, and the glaciers on all sides of the intrinsic spirit field began to shake. Countless spirit swords broke through the layer of ice. Hundreds of spirit swords lined up behind the red figure in the void like sardines. There were hundreds of spiritual swords, and every single one of them was extraordinary. The swords floated in the air, their blades emitting boundless spiritual light, as they quietly waited for Cheng Yu's next command. Although Feng Xing had long since heard that the master of Immortal Mansion was a spirit sword collector, he was still shaken to see it with his own eyes. Most importantly, Feng Xing felt that it would be impossible for Cheng Yu to seal so many spirit swords in the intrinsic spirit field on his own. You should have sensed that my intrinsic spirit field has the same restoration law as the buildings outside. The familiar I summoned before did it for me, and the intrinsic spirit field was also created for me. But after I was done using it, I had it commit suicide. Cheng Yu laughed sinisterly, a little proud of himself in his words. Feng Xing understood, making a familiar work for him, and then coveting the other party's strength after making it commit suicide. This was indeed the master of Immortal Mansion's usual style. But Feng Xing's expression didn't change much. Although he was greatly shocked by the appearance of this intrinsic spirit field, the key issue now wasn't the intrinsic spirit field, but the restoration law within it. Anyone who faced an indestructible spirit field would feel a sense of despair. Without saying anything else, Cheng Yu gave Feng Xing a look as a command. Instantly, dozens of spirit swords flew out from behind him and stabbed at Feng Xing at full speed. These spirit swords danced in the air, their hilts leaving long trails of spirit light behind them. The whole scene was even more shocking than an airplane flight show. Feng Xing didn't dare be careless, and more snake scales appeared in his hands as he fought these spirit swords. In the blink of an eye, the air was filled with the sound of colliding metal. However, no matter how many snake scales he only had 10 at most. If Cheng Yu launched an attack like the 100 Swords demonstration, he wouldn't be able to resist at all. He could only blame this intrinsic spirit field sword array for being too freakish. Feng Xing had taken everything into account, but he hadn't expected the master of Immortal Mansion to actually have this trick up his sleeve. He was well aware that if he continued to exhaust himself like this, he would be the first to fall in the end. This intrinsic spirit field had the restoration law, and wouldn't break easily. Although these frozen spirit swords seemed to be placed in random positions, they had in fact been meticulously arranged according to various sword arrays. The array caster only needed to move a finger, or give a meaningful look, and these swords would automatically attack in the form of a sword array. Thus Cheng Yu, the master of Immortal Mansion, had been watching the fight from the start, as if he were watching a show. There were more than 1,000 spirit swords in this intrinsic spirit field, and none of them were of inferior quality. These 100 spirit swords that had been summoned were just the tip of the iceberg. Cheng Yu looked relaxed as he floated in the air. The most exaggerated thing was that the cloud he was standing on was actually an extremely rare incorporeal spirit sword. Even the hilt couldn't be seen. Stepping on this incorporeal spirit sword gave him the visual effect of floating in the air. In the past, flying without the help of a magic treasure was something that only a powerful fighter could do. But in the current era of the spirit energy information, only a true immortal could do it. Cheng Yu raised his hand lightly, and dozens of spirit swords flew out. He even looked at Feng Xing with a teasing expression. How about it, do you want to surrender? At that moment, there were more than 100 spirit swords pointed at Feng Xing. With one more command, these spirit swords would fly out at the same time at Feng Xing, and turn him into a sieve. The 10 snake scales alone were no longer enough to stop the fierce collective attack of these 100 spirit swords. Do you think this is my only trump card? Feng Xing suddenly raised his head and stared at him with a smile. I'll give you time to bring out your trump card. Cheng Yu sneered. In his opinion, Feng Xing was already at his wit's end. In the next moment, Feng Xing bit his lip and actually swallowed the 10 snake scales circling around him. With a hum, The youngster's skeleton actually shrank a little, her hair gradually grew longer, and battle tattoos gradually appeared on her neck. The most frightening thing was the black armor that had formed over her body. Black spirit light lingered around her voluptuous body to form an impenetrable light membrane. Master of Immortal Mansion Cheng Yu's expression finally changed at this scene. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.